Web novels and web novel audiobooks are not the same. If you simply copy and paste a web novel into an audiobook format, the final result will provide a poor listening experience. That's why I carefully revise every single chapter in this novel to ensure an enjoyable and immersive experience for you. I go through multiple rounds of rewriting and listening to make sure the narration flows naturally, almost as if you were reading it out loud yourself. This is not just a direct copy of the original novel. However, I do acknowledge that I adapted this novel for commercial purposes, so most chapters are paid content. I hope you understand that this does not violate copyright policies. The reason I do all of this is simple: I'm just a big fan. As many of you know, I love listening to web novel audiobooks, and this is one of my personal favorites. The audio speed is set to 3, but if that feels too fast, let me know. If there's a novel you'd like me to turn into an audiobook, feel free to suggest it, and I'll do my best to make it happen. Thank you for your support. Chapter 1 Pilot. Is this it? In the middle of a dark room, with only the lights of his PC reflecting onto his face, Michael held onto his chest as if death had it in its clutches. Most people feared dying alone, but for Michael, he was more than okay with this ending. He was satisfied. For him, a life filled with playing games, watching anime, and eating delivery food was more than enough to live a happy life. As long as he had access to the internet, he could live in the confines of his home forever. After 35 years, his body seemed to have given up on him. As it turned out, feeding his body with nothing but fast food coupled with no exercise was not a good combination for a long life. Ku'uk. His vision soon turned black, as if he was being forced asleep. But something strange happened to him. He was still conscious. He couldn't move his body, he couldn't feel anything on his skin, and he couldn't see his surroundings, but he could still think. Is this the afterlife? He never really believed in any religion, but as it turned out, they were right. Hello, Michael? An ethereal voice echoed through the darkness, startling him. Who are you? Where am I? First of all, I would like to apologize. Because of a mistake on my part, you parted from your original world far too soon. You shouldn't have died there. Michael rightly assumed that he was speaking to a godlike being. You're a god, right? Yes. I am a god. Aren't you angry? Michael's indifference to his death seemed to have made the god very curious. I'll just assume that you can't bring me back to life, right? If you could, then you wouldn't have bothered to talk to me. You would have changed your mistake and revived me. Michael never bothered to care about things he couldn't change. If he shouted at the god, would he magically be able to bring him back to life? Probably not. You're not going to even ask me why an almighty god like me can't revive people? That's it? You're okay with this? If he still had a body, Michael would have shrugged his shoulders. I'm just a chill guy, he replied. He seemed to have heard an exhausted sigh from the god, but it must have been his imagination. I was so ready to be the mysterious god who stays peaceful while you scream at me. Whatever. Since this is my error, I am obliged to give you something in return. Just take my soul, man. If I don't have a consciousness, I won't know that I'm missing out on the next anime releasing this season. Ahem. Since I can't give you a life back in your original world, then I will just give you a new life in another one. If the god had a body, he would have tried to take a peek at Michael's expression, fully expecting excitement to fill his face. But Michael's response was a lackluster. The god, being the omniscient being that he is, knew about Michael's love for anime. So, he thought that Michael would love the idea of being transported into another world. Why aren't you excited? Weebs like you love isekai, right? Of course, he wasn't unfamiliar with the concept of being transported into another world. He was quite fond of it, given his love for anime and all fantasy entertainment. But watching it was one thing, living in it was an entirely different concept. Although he loved watching heroes fight against demon lords, Michael had no desire to waste his time fighting. He would rather sit on the TV and watch the hero fight the demon lord. That was why he was so satisfied with his previous life. He didn't have to fight for survival, he had everything he needed. If he was hungry, he could have his food delivered to his doorstep. If he was bored, he could boot up his PC and play games. If he was bored with that, he could watch movies on his TV. If he were to be transported to another life, he would have none of that. He would rather just disappear than start over from the beginning. Just take my soul, man, said Michael, feeling bored already and fighting the impulse to go on his phone and doom scroll for a good hour. Of course, his attitude was very apparent to the god. It made him speechless. An angry non-believer would have been easier to deal with than Michael. Sorry, not possible. I have to put your soul into another body in another world. That's the rule. And no matter how much you complain, well, if you have no choice, then so be it. That easy? Hey. Don't shrug your non-existent shoulders. After dealing with Michael for only a few minutes, The god was already tired. He immediately cast a spell and sent Michael's soul down into another world. A strange warm feeling enveloped Michael's entire being, as if he was submerged into a warm, viscous water. Immersed in this water, Michael heard the fading voice of the annoyed god. And since I took you away from your very comfortable life, I have decided to reincarnate you as the youngest son of the richest family in the entire world. So, live a life of luxury, Mr. Stoic. Chapter 2 Reborn. Instead of hearing the sound of a newborn weeping as he left the womb of his mother, they could only see a strangely confused face on the baby. Doctor, is my baby okay? The man with a white coat waved his hands, and his body glowed a slight greenish color. There seemed to be a mirage or a semi-transparent image of vines and leaves growing on his face. He looked at the baby in his hands. I'm perplexed. There's nothing physically wrong with the baby. While his parents were worrying for his safety, Michael was still processing his reincarnation to this world. He looked at the faces around him. The man holding him upright seemed to be the doctor, given that he was the one who pulled him out of his mother's womb. Speaking of his mother, she still laid on her bed and looked at him the way a mother would when a doctor tells her that something's wrong with her baby, unreasonably worried. Her golden yellow hair spread out freely onto her pillows, showing the hard labor he put her through. She looks human. At least the god put me into a world still similar to my old one. She looked beautiful, too. If she were transported into his original world, there would be no doubt that she would be recruited into a Korean idol agency early on in her life, just from her looks alone. Meanwhile, his father stood right next to his mother. His stubble beard matched well with his princely uniform, making him look extremely dignified. He looked like he had just come home from being awarded with tons of medals from the army. Both of his parents looked like they were ripped straight out of a medieval painting. Are they seriously cosplaying during my birth? And where am I? This room doesn't look like a hospital. This is now your house, a home birth? I thought God reincarnated me into the richest household in the world. Can't they afford the best medical help in the world? I don't even see any ultrasound machines or fetal monitoring systems. They are from the richest family in the world, but there are no machines present in this room. Then, he saw something strange. The doctor who was holding him suddenly lit up with an ethereal green light. He was glowing. What the? I have detected the doctor's use of examining magic. Magic? There's magic in this world. In hindsight, Michael shouldn't be surprised. God knew that he liked anime and fantasy books, so he would definitely transport him into a magical world instead of a normal one. Would you like to learn more about this magic? Yeah, sure. Analyzing magic, magic theory acquired, medical eyes, earth and light element. This magic allows the user to peer through a target's body and observe it for any abnormality or disease. Michael saw the words appear in his vision, much like what a system looked like in most anime and fantasy series he saw back in his old world. If I'm like one of those mechs who can copy every ability, spell, and power I see, then this reincarnation might be better than I thought. After all, magic allowed conveniences that even his old world couldn't achieve. Humans in his previous life would have needed a forklift to lift a heavy rock. But in this world, if mages were anything like the series he watched, they could do it with a simple spell. The same goes for a water spell. It could have solved world hunger in his old world. This is good. I could have a more comfortable life in this life. Since he was now a rich kid, he could simply buy butlers and mages at his disposal. He didn't have to go to school, he didn't have to work to earn money, and he could just inherit everything he needed from the richest family in the entire world. There is a high possibility that your parents would hire a private tutor for you to learn administrative duties. Michael ignored Chachkwon. Why would he need to learn things when his personal eye assistant could do all the work for him? The only problem is the fact that I can't watch my favorite anime and series in this world. Speaking of which, where's the TV? Where's the air conditioning? And as he looked around the room, a daunting realization came to pass. Instead of seeing a well-lit room and feeling the freshly cold, refrigerated air revolve around the room, Michael only saw candles and oil lamps attached to the walls. No. Slowly, the pieces finally came together. The home birth, the unsanitary room, the royal attire of his parents, and the lack of a single light bulb in the room finally made him realize the horrible situation God put him in. He reincarnated into a world stuck in the medieval times. He might have been born into the richest family in the world, but even the kings and queens were living like peasants compared to normal people in the modern world. But that wasn't even the worst part. Where are the magic lights? If this world had magic in it, why weren't people taking advantage of the fact that mages could summon water, fire, air, and ground from out of nowhere? And what is that smell? That smell comes from feces. Feces. Wait a minute. What about toilets? Don't tell me. There is a high possibility that this world doesn't have any plumbing. No. Michael had no choice but to scream out his frustrations about this world that the god put him into. There was nothing comfortable about living in this life. Chapter 3 Mana Gathering. It's been a few days since his birth, and all Michael did was lay in his crib all day long. Usually, novels and animes skip this part of the reincarnation or have a time skip to when they could move around a bit more, but Michael was experiencing every boring second of his new mundane life. The only form of entertainment to keep him occupied was the spinning birds installed on top of his crib. That wasn't enough. "How's my dear baby boy? What the? Why can I suddenly understand my mother's words? I have gathered enough data to form a rudimentary understanding of their language. For your convenience, I have automatically translated their words into something you can understand directly to your brain." Having the Chachk-1 by his side turned out to be a literal godsend. If it could be this intelligent and help him figure out the world faster, then it could make up for the fact that God put him into a medieval world. The best part was that he didn't even ask the eye to do that for him. It must have heard all the maids and butlers talking outside his room and decided to decipher the language all on its own. "Isn't my Michael so cute?" "Tell me he's cute," said his mother. "Yes, madam. The young master is the cutest boy I've seen in history," replied the maid next to her. Surprisingly, his name in this world also turned out to be Michael. He didn't dislike the coincidence. She reached down to his crib and pinched his cheeks. "Ow!" cried Michael. "Madam, you may have hurt the boy." "Oh, silly me. It's just that my baby is so cute, I couldn't help myself." Michael didn't mind his mother's overbearingness. She did birth him, after all. In the first few days of his birth, she watched over him without missing a beat. She could have passed him off to her multiple maids, but she took it upon herself to do it personally. "Why don't you come meditate with me? Who knows, maybe he'll be a genius with the earth element like me." His mother took him out of his cradle and sat down on the floor with her legs crossed. She put him on her legs and tickled his sides. "My dear Michael, I'll teach you everything there is to know about magic when you're old enough." "Humphrey. Your father says he wants to hire a tutor, but that's unnecessary. I can teach you all by myself." Once she was ready, she closed her eyes. Her previous smiles were gone and replaced by a solemn expression. Suddenly, he saw strange mossy green particles each the same size as a grain of sand appear around the room. These blobs of floating particles slowly revolved around her body before eventually sinking into her skin. What's she doing? What are those things? Those are individual earth element mana. She is gathering them around her body and storing them deep in her abdomen. Michael recognized this technique in fantasy anime. If he wasn't wrong, then this was a form of exercise or technique to gather mana to be used later. He was mesmerized by this sight. It was the best thing he had ever seen since he reincarnated in this world. His mother spent a good hour meditating by herself and gathering all the earth elements into her body. Once she was done, she looked a bit exhausted. She bid him goodbye and left him in his crib. Once she was gone, Michael was still reeling from seeing mana in action. "Can I learn how to do that?" Analyzation complete. Magic gathering theory obtained. "Would you like to start gathering mana?" Of course, Michael said yes. If he could see those enchanting particles again, then it would completely solve his boredom during this baby phase. He would be accomplishing two things at the same time. He would be increasing his strength, while also keeping himself entertained while staying in his crib all day. Downloading theory. Complete. Suddenly, Michael felt a surge of information appear in his brain. Without even thinking about it, he closed his eyes and started to meditate just like how his mother gathered mana. He didn't know how to explain it, it was like instinct. It was as if he gained another arm that only had the express function of gathering mana. Slowly the whole room started to fill with different colors of particles. There was green, blue, red, and silver glowing dust floating around the room. If green is earth, does that mean blue is water, red is fire, and silver is air? That's the basic element in most fantasies. That is right. The elements available in this room are made up of the four main elements. Michael closed his eyes and concentrated on his body, creating a sort of hurricane or tornado in his abdomen that sucked up all the particles in the room. Slowly, every single elemental mana sunk deep into his skin and gathered deep into his abdomen. He felt four minuscule pebbles form in his body, each having the same color as the four elemental mana. They automatically sorted themselves into their respective stones and continued to grow them to a larger size. If I can absorb all four, does that mean I'm able to use all the natural elements? Yes, that is right. However, that may not be the extent of your powers. There is reason to believe that there are other elements in this world that are not currently present in the room. You may be compatible with them as well. It looked like the god didn't cheap out on his powers. He became like the other main characters in anime that could master all the elements. This is good, but it's exhausting. He was gasping for breath even though only a few seconds had passed. I'm tired. Commencing automatic mana gathering while asleep, Michael closed his eyes and took a nap, with the mana particles continuing to sink into his skin. Later, His mother came into the room, noticing that there were fewer earth elements in the scene. She chalked it up as nothing more than a coincidence, not knowing that it was her son who emptied it out. Chapter 4 Casting a spell. A few more months passed as Michael continued with his duties as a baby, doing nothing but sleeping all day long. The only reason he could stay sane was through mana gathering. Every day, he would gather as many mana elements as he could from the surroundings and reinforce the elemental stones in his body. He noticed that as he gathered more elements, his sensitivity to those elements became much finer. He could now sense how much mana was in the air and which elements they comprised. That wasn't the only benefit from gathering mana in his body. Somehow, it allowed him to strengthen his baby body enough for him to almost stand up. Of course, he only practiced this when he was all alone. Which, by the way, wasn't as long as he wanted. If he wasn't being cradled in the arms of his mother, then he would probably be getting teased by one of the maids. Somehow, they took quite a liking to him, showing him everything there was to see in the mansion, all while pinching his cheeks. It seemed that the god had blessed him with both cute and handsome traits. He was suffering from success, as they say. And as strange as it sounded, it took a long time, about 2 months, before Michael learned about his mother and father's names. This was because his mother insisted on him calling her mommy. Meanwhile, his father was always out of the house. From what he understood from their little spats, he was busy dealing with a business that took him most nights out of the house. She didn't like that very much and always complained about it to him. Something about the parched lands or whatever. But after listening intently to the maid's gossip, he was able to figure out that his mother was called Lilia while his father was called Bart. As for him, his full name was Michael van Vanderbilt. The Vanderbilts were the richest and most influential family in the world, at least that's what the god said. He hadn't been out of the house, so he couldn't compare his current living to the state of the world outside. But as rich as they were, they couldn't even afford a single air conditioning unit. He was only banking on the fact that he was due some hefty inheritance from his family. He could use that money to make his life easier and more comfortable for as long as he could live. That would have to wait until he got older. For now, he continued with his daily baby life. Michael soon turned 1 year old, which became a very big deal in the Vanderbilt family. His mother immediately ordered for a small venue to be made near the house where they could celebrate his birthday. This was perhaps Michael's first clue as to how incredibly wealthy his family was. That little venue his mother had made for him? It was as big as a football stadium. They had to go by carriage just to go from one end to the next. And that wasn't the worst part. She was actually dissatisfied with how small it was. Her exact words were, "I'm sorry, baby. I'll make sure to build a bigger one next year. It's absurd how little we're spending for your first birthday, but we just have so little time for now. Don't worry, I already had the next venue started early." Just the manpower alone needed to construct this little venue far exceeded what Michael could even count. Because there were no bulldozers or excavators in this world, everything was done by hand. He saw mages casting spells to topple down trees and crush boulders. There must have been more than 10,000 of them working every day to construct the venue for his first birthday. Magic theory acquired, magic theory acquired, magic theory acquired, magic theory acquired, magic theory acquired. The best part about this whole thing was that he was able to witness firsthand how mages casted spells. With his sensitivity to elemental mana, he was able to see how they absorbed and pushed mana out of their bodies to create their spells. If one wanted to create a gust of wind that knocked down trees, then air mana needed to flow from the abdomen to the hands, and then transform into magic the moment they release it into the world. And thanks to Chachkwon, he was able to find the theory behind those spells, allowing him to use the spell himself. Of course, he just needed to gather enough mana to do it. Once he was back in his cradle, Michael wasted no time to try out the spells. Tornado, air element. This magic allows the user to summon a huge whirling tornado that sucks everything in its path. Michael tried to cast this spell but found that he didn't have enough mana to do it. Most of the spells he learned from the workers were 2 spells and above, which seemed to be far out of reach for now. Thankfully, there were 4 spells that only had a 1-star rating. Water ball, water element. This magic allows the user to create a water sphere. Ember, fire element. This magic allows the user to create a small fire from the tip of a finger. Rock throw, earth element. This magic allows the user to manipulate small rocks and heave them outwards. Wind blow, air element. This magic allows the user to create a gust of wind in the target direction. Michael closed his eyes and concentrated, allowing the elemental particles to flow out of his abdomen and into the tip of his hands. First, a glob of water manifested on top of his left hand. It was only as small as his tiny fists, but it was enough proof that he could indeed cast spells while he was a baby. He didn't want to stop there. He casted another spell, with a tiny rock manifesting beside the small glob of water. Then, he raised his finger, creating a small fire the size of a candle flame. These three elements floated in the air. And with the final spell, Michael created a gust of wind that threw the three elemental manifestations towards the wall. Chapter 5 Commotion. Finally, it was Michael's first birthday celebration. The days flashed by super fast, all because of a little incident that happened in his crib. Somehow, there were burns and watermarks on the wall. It was tiny, but it was enough to cause alarm throughout the whole household. They quickly found out that it had traces of magic, meaning someone cast a spell in the room of the young master. Even though it was a minor incident, his mother acted like Michael was subject to a botched assassination. Maids were doubled, security was tripled, and Michael was forced to sleep in his mother's room for the time being. Michael thought it was an overreaction, but he learned from the maids that this little incident was the talk of the whole nation. Magic investigators quickly found out that the spell came from only one person, and was cast at the same time. No big deal, Michael thought. But then he found out that having multiple elemental mana was considered extremely rare. Having dual elements would land you into the genius category, while having three elements could be considered as transcendent talent. But having all four elements? That was the talk of legends. Somehow or someway, this once-in-a-thousand-year genius sneaked into the youngest son of the Vanderbilt family and cast 4 harmless one-star spells. It didn't make sense. It was then that Michael decided to be a little bit more careful with his spells. Who knew how they would react when he revealed that he was the one who cast those spells, all while being a baby? Soon, the fanfare died down. Since nothing was stolen and no one was hurt, the authorities chalked it up to some weird natural phenomenon. But of course, his mother couldn't help but brag to her friends about how her son was blessed. It was quite interesting to see how fast she changed. 1 second, she was worried sick, but the moment the investigators told her it was a natural phenomenon, she was all smiles and talked about how God personally blessed Michael with talent. Michael decided to tell her the truth when he got older. Technically, she is correct. God did bless you with this life and all your powers, yeah, but she didn't have to know that. Now, she'll be bragging about it any chance she gets. Case in point, during Michael's birthday celebration, she greeted all the high-profile guests and introduced him to them personally. She was like a broken record, saying the same words of praise about Michael to the guests. Thankfully, his father stopped her before Michael got too annoyed. If it wouldn't cause a commotion, Michael would have climbed out of the stroller and left the party. But since he had to act like a baby, he had to stay still in his stroller, looking at nothing but his mother's bragging face. In the meantime, he decided to gather more mana. He made sure to gather as little mana as possible so as not to arouse suspicion. Soon, he got tired and went to sleep. But as he was about to fall into slumber, he seemed to have heard a peculiar little conversation from his parents and some guests. "I have to give it to you, Vanderbilts. You've made such a nice-looking son," said some old guy. "All thanks to my genes, of course. Though, I guess my husband did give him some of his nice traits," replied his mother. Yes. I must admit, I am envious of your lineage. What say you that we arrange something that will benefit both families? As you know, my daughter was just born." "I'm listening," his mother said. Time passed and Michael was now 5 years old. He looked at himself in the mirror and saw a dashing young boy. He had his mother's golden hair and his father's sharp jaw. He raised his hand and cast a spell, creating a blob of water larger than his head. The amount of the elemental mana in his body had transformed by leaps and bounds. He could even fill up the water in his bathtub in one spell, which was surprising because this was the level of water that he saw those mages create. At 5 years old, he could cast a spell the way a 25-year-old adult would cast it. But perhaps the best part was his control. Instead of simply being a blob of water, he could stretch, contact, and change its shape as long as he willed it. If he wanted, he could even command the water to wash him in just a second. But of course, that would arouse suspicion. "Young master, I'm coming in the bathroom," said Beretta while carrying a large bucket of water in her hand. She was one of Michael's maids, and the one in charge of helping him bathe. If Michael used his magic spell to wash himself, Beretta would immediately find it suspicious because there still wasn't any water in the bathtub. She was carrying the first bucket right now. This is so inconvenient," Michael uttered in disappointment. Whenever he had to wash himself, Beretta would fill a bucket with water and slowly fill up his bathtub. She had to go all the way to the well in their backyard about 5 times to fill it. This is what I hate about the medieval times. I took for granted the faucets I had back in my old world. I wish I had that here. If only I knew how it worked, I would build it myself. Michael wasn't good at studying, so he didn't even know modern-day faucets worked. "Would you like to learn how a faucet worked?" Chat1's timely suggestion surprised Michael. "You can do that?" His personal eye assistant didn't waste any time and downloaded the information directly into his mind, giving him mechanical insight into how faucets worked. I can build this." Would you like a step-by-step instruction on how to build a faucet? Chapter 6 Planning Plumbing. Suddenly, a flood of information washed over his mind, creating diagrams and blueprints that became embedded deep into his memory. He knew those blueprints like the back of his hand. With the supplemental knowledge given by Chapter 1 of how plumbing worked, Michael understood perfectly how to construct the faucet by himself. Yes. Did you say something, young master? Beretta came into the bathroom and saw Michael dancing up and down in joy. Oh, it's nothing. Michael tried to rein in his excitement. However, the prospect of building his own running water source made him extremely happy. It would be one step closer to his ideal life of comfortability. Foo-fa-foo. So the young master is already at that age, huh? Huh? Oh, it's nothing. I'll leave you to enjoy your bath, young master. Beretta poured the bucket of water, but it barely filled the bathtub. She would need a few more trips to the well to completely fill it up. She imperceptibly winced as her back experienced a stinging pain. She didn't show it to the young master and continued to act as if she was fine. I've prepared your clothes in your room, young master. Okay, thank you. Michael slipped into the bath and made plans on how he was going to create his faucet. Meanwhile, Beretta finally left the room and only then did she show an exhausted expression. One of the maids walked over to her and asked, "Are you alright?" Beretta waved off the young maid. "It's fine." However, the young maid could see the pained expression on Beretta's face. It worried her. The veteran maid wasn't exactly young enough to wave off this ailment like when she was young. "It's because you keep bringing up water for the young master. You don't have to do that. We have plenty of water mages employed in the house. They could summon water for the young master in a single second." Beretta waved it off. "Nonsense. The young master wants his water a little bit warmer. The water from the mages is too cold." The young maid couldn't help but sigh. "Just because of that, you're breaking your own back? You pamper the young master too much." Beretta smiled. "It's fine. I like it. It's the young master, after all." After washing himself, Michael immediately made his way towards the house library. This was the place that contained many books about a variety of things such as the world outside and its history. As expected of the richest family in the world, they could afford to spend the budget of an entire mansion just to create a vast collection of books from all around the world. Just the space of this library alone could be considered as a mansion in his old world. He spent minutes just walking around the library trying to find the section about the topic he wanted to know about. Finally, he came across it. Vanderbilt history. Before he figured out how to create the necessary equipment for his faucet, Michael first needed to know if it was feasible to install plumbing in this house in the first place. He wanted to see the blueprint of the entire house and its entire structure. Michael also couldn't create the equipment if he didn't know where he was going to install it, so he wanted to get the lay of the land first and foremost. Finally, he saw a book at the top of the shelf labeled Bart Vanderbilt Mansion. He climbed the ladder until he could finally grab the book he needed. He immediately sat on a desk and parsed through the pages. Of course, it was all in this world's language. It didn't matter though because all he needed was his personal eye assistant to do all the work for him. "Can you find the optimal placement for the plumbing system?" "Yes. I can." Analyzing, Michael flipped through the pages and let Chapter 1 read through them. If someone was looking at him right now, they would think he was just pretending to read like an adult. After all, he was flipping through the pages and never even bothered to read them. Analyzation finished. "Would you like me to tell you the optimal location for the plumbing system?" "Tell me." And suddenly another burst of information flowed into his brain, giving him tons of information about the mansion's internal structure. Not only that, he saw the end result of his project. Chapter 1 showed him a holographic image in his mind of the mansion with the plumbing system already installed. Good. Now, I just need to learn how to make it. According to the specifications given to him by Chapter 1, the pipes needed to be made out of copper. Since copper wasn't unique in this world, he could easily obtain it using his family's funds. As for transforming them into pipes, that was easy as well. He already had a repertoire of production-type magic spells he gained from the mages who constructed his birthday venue. Because of his early gathering of mana, Michael was already able to use 2-star magic at the ripe old age of 5 years old. That was crucial since Metal Bend and Metal Fuse were both 2-star rated magic spells. He still didn't know much about spells and their ratings, but from what he experienced himself, it seemed the difference between 1-star and 2-star spells was only the mana needed to cast them. "Okay. I can build this right now." Michael walked out of the library with a stern face. To build his project, he can't forget the most important part, the materials. And to get those materials, he needed to get permission to buy them. He walked up to a door in the mansion, with his face serious as if he was about to go to war. Knock. Knock. "Come in." Atlan opened the door. The person on the other side of the room had a wide smile on their face as if they knew they had complete power over Michael. "Mother, I've come to bargain." "What is it, my dear boy?" she said, fanning her face with a handkerchief. "I need to buy something." His mother stood up and walked to the glass window next to her bed. "And why should I do that?" Michael gritted his teeth. In exchange, you can pinch my cheeks 5 times. Deal." And so, Michael could finally start his plumbing project, albeit with red swollen cheeks at the end of the day. Chapter 7 Faucet created. Michael finally received the huge shipment of materials in a box. Since the Vanderbilt family was involved in a lot of businesses, they could easily procure a few metals from their warehouse and give them to the young master. As for where he was going to create this project, Michael had an idea. The advantage of having a big estate in the middle of nowhere was that it had a lot of empty space. The Vanderbilt house was made in the middle of a forest, with mountains and hills surrounding them. This was a quiet space away from other people and devoid of any dangerous animals. So, Michael was confident in going out alone by himself. Michael sneaked out of the house using his improved physical ability to jump through the walls, with the help of the 1-star magic spell, Air Jump. "I need a place where I can work on my projects without any distractions." "Chachkwon, can you find a place like that?" "Understood." Analyzing location. Scanning, found. Michael suddenly saw a giant arrow pointing deeper toward the forest. He followed it, and after a few minutes, he found himself facing a flat wall on the feet of a small mountain. "I like what you're thinking. I can build a small little cave here." Michael used the 1-star spell, Boulder Crush, to slowly carve out the wall. Upon releasing the spell, a half-sphere indent the size of a basketball appeared on the flat wall, turning into nothing but dust. Wow. This might take a while. Michael spent days working on carving out what he called the project room. This accomplished 2 things. First, he was able to have an isolated room all to himself, and second, he was able to practice his spells and improve the mana in his body. After about 20 days of earnest work, Michael finally finished his project room. He made a 20 by 20 meter room inside the mountain, with a height of 5 meters, which was enough to be very spacious. He also made tables, chairs, and desks made out of metal, using the 2-star spell, Metal Bend. This was good practice for creating the pipes for his faucet. With everything done, Michael was finally ready to start. Duck. 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 Everyone in the house heard the sounds of hammers banging against walls. It sent out reverberations through the entire mansion, with the maids even feeling the sensation down in the kitchen house. "What is going on up there?" asked one of the maids. "It's the young master. He's doing something in secret. He said that no one should bother him." Beretta answered. "What's with all that noise? It sounds dangerous. Should we stop this? Sir and Madam aren't here for an entire month." The maids were getting anxious about the young master's actions. Even though his mother allowed him to do whatever he wanted while she was out of town, the maids didn't think the young master would do something this drastic. It sounded as if he was destroying the house. Then, silence. After a few minutes, Michael walked down to the kitchen house, garnering strange looks from all the maids. There was dust and concrete debris all over his face and clothes. "Working hard, or hardly working?" "Ha ha ha. All in a day's work," Michael said to the maids while pouring water into his cup. He wiped the sweat off his forehead and refreshed himself. "Well, good day to you all." Then, he walked back up to his room and continued his strange little project that shook the whole mansion. The maids were simply speechless. Michael's mood couldn't get any better. After a few more days of working, Michael finally finished his faucet project. He looked at his bathroom and saw a simple faucet sticking out on one of the walls. It just looked like a bent pipe with a simple lever on top. Under this faucet was a small bowl, with pipes on the bottom leading down to the floor. Finally, the moment of truth came. Michael twisted the lever on the faucet, and a gurgling sound echoed through the pipes. And after a few seconds, the first few drops of water flowed into the sink. Then, the drops turned into a small line, then finally to a normal thick stream of water. "Idit!" Michael screamed in joy. He scooped up water from the sink and threw it all over himself. After about a month of hard work, all his efforts came to fruition. To make this work, Michael had to create a large water tank at the top of the mansion. With the combination of gravity and air pressure, the water would freely flow through the pipes as long as they were below the tank itself. He had to break down parts of the wall and parts of the flooring to lay down the pipes to do it, making the room and the house look like it was ravaged by a maniac. It didn't matter though, because he was one step closer to having the comfortable life he had back in his old world. Not only that, this was a technological breakthrough in this world as well. "Young master, I think we need to talk about the noises." Beretta walked inside Michael's room and went directly to the bathroom to confront him. When she saw all the destruction and dust around the room, she wanted to complain to him that he shouldn't destroy the house just because he wanted to. But then, she saw the faucet. The water was still flowing down as if there was a raging river behind those pipes. She was speechless. dumbstruck. Young master. What is this? Michael smiled. Oh, this? It's called a faucet. It's just something that I made as a hobby. Want to try it? Beretta was intrigued, but she was still apprehensive. She didn't know what kind of magic it was that allowed water to flow through that faucet. And as she moved closer, Michael suddenly splashed her with the water from the sink, surprising her. When she felt the warmness of the water, she realized something. This wasn't water made out of magic. This was water straight out of the well. It was natural. But how could this be? Chapter 8. Flush. A whole crowd of maids fit themselves in Michael's bathroom. They were all marveling at the strange non-magic water that was flowing through this thing called a faucet. This doesn't make sense. How is it flowing so fast? Is there someone blowing water from behind it? Beretta stared down Michael. Young master, did you make this yourself? He nodded. How? They all asked, their eyes burning with curiosity. Michael shrugged his shoulders. It's nothing special, really. I just used the gravity and pressure to my advantage. To explain in easy terms, water flows down because of gravity, and if you connect pipes. He gave them a small lecture on how water pressure worked. Of course, these were all the words that he gained from Chachkwon, which was why he sounded like he knew what he was doing. The maids didn't know that. And when they kept listening to the young master words, they couldn't help but be shocked at his apparent intelligence. They thought that the faucet was magic, but when they heard how simple the idea was, they couldn't believe no one had thought of it before. Young master. You're a genius. One of the maids praised him. We must tell this to Madam at once. She'll be shocked to learn that he is not only sharp in looks but also in mind. Michael raised his hand and stopped them. I'd appreciate it if you didn't tell my mother before she came home. I don't want to interrupt their business. The only reason why Michael could have free rein to do whatever he wanted in the mansion was because his parents were out of town for a considerable amount of time. No one was there to stop him. But if she came home and saw this, he didn't know how they would react. Young master, what's this? One of the maids finally noticed the suspicious bowl of metal right next to the sink. Instead of being installed in the wall, this large bowl was installed into the very flooring itself. There was already water inside this bowl, but there wasn't any faucet above it. Oh, that? I call that a toilet. This was the very reason why he wanted running water installed in the house in the first place. Michael spent 5 years of his life here in this world, having to do his business in the bushes or in a literal pot. People were already used to the smell of feces in this world because it was normal for them. But for Michael, who lived in a clean world, it was far too much to bear. That was until Michael created a proper plumbing system. For now, he couldn't create a proper filtration system, so all the flushed water would flow down the pipes and reach the river a couple of ways away from the house. He was planning on improving it later on, but for now, this would do. What does it do? Oh, I know. It's for drinking, right? Michael immediately shook his head. No, but I'll show you. He walked over to the toilet and pushed a button on top of the toilet tank. And suddenly, whoosh! The water sunk down the toilet pipes and created the flushing sound that Michael was so familiar with back in his old world. But for the maids, the sound was like a thunderous roar from a monster, making them think that it was hidden somewhere under that toilet bowl. All the maids were caught off guard and nearly jumped out of the room. What is that? Young master, is that some kind of animal? Michael laughed. No. This is called a toilet. It's where you do your business. The maids were still apprehensive of the toilet, but Michael's words piqued their curiosity. You mean business as in business? Like number 1 and number 2? Michael nodded. You sit down at this bowl and do your business. And once you're done, you push this button here and all the water is going to be flushed out, along with all the business you dropped in the toilet. And finally, you wash your hands in the faucet. Once you've done that, you're all clean. One of the maids had a curious look on her face. Where does it go after you've flushed? I connected the pipes to the river near the mansion. They all gasped, finally realizing the potential of this toilet. After all, they were the ones in charge of cleaning all that business that everyone in the house created. They would manually shovel it out and dispose of it in the river, making for a really laborious task. They still weren't done after that. They would also spend a lot of water and elbow grease to clean the latrines or dirty pots in the house. But with this toilet, they didn't have to do that. Since everything was flushed down with a simple push of a button, they didn't have to dirty their hands. Not only that, they'll also be getting rid of the smell. This is a game changer. I've never heard of it before. Young master. This invention of yours is beyond genius. A marvelous work of water. You're even more mystifying than some mages, young master. The maids couldn't praise him enough. They inspected the faucet and the toilet as if they were made with nothing but gold. Some of them got so excited with the fascinating running water of the faucet that they ended up splashing themselves in a playful manner. Ha ha ha, Michael laughed. He had the same reaction with them the moment he finished the plumbing system. Okay, enough. This is unbecoming of you guys. We are professional. Beretta immediately stopped the young maids from being too rude. They were having fun and playing as if this wasn't the young master's personal bathroom. They were already being disrespectful the moment they crowded the room. Out, before I tell the madam that you all went to the young master's room. The maids quickly straightened their backs and left the room, completely terrified about the prospect of the madam getting jealous of them. Beretta also left the room, making sure to keep them in line. In the end, Michael was left all alone to enjoy the fruits of his hard labor. Chapter 9 Proper Washrooms. The next morning, Beretta was suddenly woken up by a cacophony of maids screaming. Kaya. She immediately got up from her bed and went outside the maids' dormitory, expecting to see something horrible that happened. But when she looked down at the atrium, she didn't see anyone at all. It was dead empty. Usually, maids would be cleaning and tending to chores by now, but there wasn't anyone there at all. No way. She followed the screaming to the kitchen house and saw that the maids were fawning over something inside. What's with all this commotion? She asked. The young maids all turned around and faced Beretta with the biggest smiles on their faces. They dispersed and showed her what they were fussing over. And once they did, Beretta couldn't hide her shock. Near the cabinet where most plates and kitchen utensils were kept, there was suddenly a new fixture of a bowl sticking out of the walls. And on top of this bowl was the miraculous faucet. Not only that, there must have been more than 3 of them installed side by side. The young master must have made them last night. Isn't this amazing? Screamed the maids. We can wash all the plates here, and we don't have to go down to the well. Beretta walked over to the faucets and twisted the lever, causing a healthy flow of non-magic water to splash down the bowl. And that's not even the best part. You should see what he did to the bathroom. The young maids all pushed the veteran maid towards the communal latrine. This used to be a place where all the employees of the mansion did their business. Therefore, it didn't exactly smell like the greatest place in the world. But even as they got closer, Beretta barely even smelled anything from the latrines. And as they all walked into the room, the reason was finally clear. The room had now been completely changed, with faucets placed on one side of the wall. There were also pipes installed on the floor, allowing all the dirt to flow out of the room without leaving their stench inside. On the opposite side, there were toilets installed, which had the marvelous ability to flush down business away to the river, making the bathroom as clean as it had ever been. We've already tried it out, and it worked just like how the young master said it would. I'm still too scared of the flushing sound, but I think I'll get used to it in the future. Having access to clean, running water in the house was a complete game changer. Not only did the maids feel as if they were incredibly clean the whole day, but their work had also lessened by a significant margin. Did you like it? A male youthful voice sprung up behind the maids. Michael was leaning against the wall with a smile on his face. The maids immediately rushed over to him to give him a big hug. Young master, I love you. I'll serve you forever. I didn't think you'd give us something so precious, thank you. I want to stay in the bathroom forever. Michael's entire face was squeezed by the maids hugging him from all sides, but he didn't exactly hate it. Hearing them so excited over something so basic only made him realize how low the living standards were in this world. He vowed then and there to continue making his and everybody else's life better in the future. Once he slipped out of the overeager maids, Michael walked over to Beretta. I want to show you something, he said to her. The older maid looked over to the young maids, but they had no clue as to what the young master was talking about. It seemed as if the bathroom wasn't the only surprise he had in store for the maids. Michael walked over to the maids' dormitory, with Beretta and the rest of the maids following behind him. The maids' dorm was a building annexed to the mansion where all the maids slept and lived their daily lives outside of work. They had their own rooms, and their own designated washrooms. And it seemed as if Michael was walking over to that exact place. Young master? Beretta asked. Michael continued to walk over to Beretta's designated washroom. Even though it was named that, it only had the bare necessities like a bucket, and a dipper used to wash themselves. But when Michael opened the door, every single one of the maids looked at the strange pipe connected to the wall. There was a single pipe coming out of the wall like the faucet, but this one looked completely different than the one they saw before. This one was saucer-shaped, with tiny holes on the bottom. This is called a shower. Michael turned the lever and suddenly, water cascaded out of the tiny holes in the saucer-shaped metal, creating a miniature waterfall in the bathroom. Beretta slowly approached the falling water from the shower. It was warm. It wasn't like the cold, strange water that mages created. It felt natural. I know you don't like magic water, so I created this shower. You don't have to carry another heavy bucket from the well. You don't have to strain your back. That last part was important. Beretta and the other maids thought that the young master never knew of her condition. But as it turned out, He knew exactly what she was going through. Young master. Is that the reason you created this in the first place? Michael turned around, but there was a slight blush on his face. No, I just want a shower for myself too, that's all. And this, it's nothing. It didn't even take me that long. The young maids couldn't help but smile to themselves. Even when lying, the young master was so adorable. Kaya. He's so sweet. You've become even cuter, young master. He's not only smart, but he's incredibly caring as well. What a perfect man. Beretta, on the other hand, felt her eyes moisten. Even though she was just a maid, the young master still treated him with a lot of consideration. This was the exact reason why she loved serving the young master, and perhaps the reason why she wouldn't mind serving him for the rest of her life. Chapter 10. Soap. To clean. The days passed, and the young master's inventions spread like wildfire amongst the workers in the Vanderbilt mansion. Some of the people who were out of town when Michael created the faucets were immediately greeted with the strange sight of maids spending most of their time in the kitchen house and the latrines. From the butler's perspective, the maids suddenly became addicted to washing themselves 2 times a day. It wasn't a day later that they finally learned the truth. It seemed that the young master installed a working shower and toilet in all the maids' rooms, allowing them to have easy access to running water without having to bother the mages each time. As expected, the butlers were as shocked as the maids when they first saw the faucets and toilets firsthand. The young master built this. A couple of the butlers were handymen as well and knew how difficult it was to create the pipes and equipment needed to create this whole system. It couldn't have been made by hand alone. Some of the more magic-savvy butlers immediately noticed that the pipes looked like they had been manipulated using a spell. It would make sense how the young master created such a perfect pipe with barely any imperfections. But that didn't make sense as well. Michael was only 5 years old. He was only supposed to have just started learning about magic, much less casting them. Since they were just butlers, they couldn't question the young master himself. But on the inside, they were slightly intimidated by how much of a monstrous genius the young master was for inventing this marvelous plumbing system, as well as having the magic acuity to create them. Of course, Michael noticed their looks. He knew that his secret of being able to cast spells wouldn't last long. The maids may have not questioned how he was able to create the pipes, but his mother and father definitely would. But since they weren't here just yet, Michael's secret was still a secret. And to bribe the butlers for their silence, Michael went ahead and installed showers and toilets in their dormitory as well. That seemed to have done the trick as they, too, got engrossed with the satisfying feeling of water flowing from the showers like they had their own waterfalls. They never made fun of the maids again and also went ahead and showered 2 times a day. Of course, everyone had to pitch in whenever the water tank emptied. Michael installed 6 manual water pumps right next to the tank, which was connected to the water source below the ground. It would only take 6 people every day to pump water a couple of minutes in the morning to make sure the tank had enough water for the whole day. The effort to do this was very minuscule compared to manually taking water from the well and carrying it all over the mansion. It had been more than a week since Michael created the plumbing system and the atmosphere in the mansion completely changed. Maids walked with a little bit more pep in their step, butlers walked with a little bit more swagger, and overall, everyone was more than satisfied with the changes the young master made for them. On one particular day, Michael happened upon one of the butlers carrying the carcass of a deer on his back. When he asked them, it turned out that the reason the butlers and mages were out of the mansion a week ago was because they were hunting out in the wilderness. We're preparing for the winter, young master. We need to cure the meat now so that we have enough food for when the scarcity hits the nation. Michael looked at the sliced open body of the deer and saw the yellowish-white part of the meat. Fats. Then, he suddenly got an idea. When taking a bath, what was the most important aspect of keeping oneself clean? The answer was soap. Now, this medieval world did have a very primitive version of the soap that he was used to. But in his opinion, it wasn't up to his standards. Hey Chachkwan, can you give me step-by-step instructions on how to make soap based on my previous world's standard? Certainly. To make soap that can cleanse and improve the skin, you can start by. His personal eye assistant once again flooded his brain with information, giving him a simple but comprehensive manual that he could do right now. Can I have some of the animal fats? Michael asked the butler. Animal fat was an important part of creating soap, which he knew even before he asked Chachkwan about it. The butler looked at Michael, his expression curious as to why a 5-year-old would need animal fat. But then again, that same 5-year-old somehow created something that not even the smartest inventors could create. So, he eventually relented. Michael went ahead and asked Beretta to procure the rest of the materials he needed for his next project. Young master, are you planning on creating something big again? Beretta questioned him with a glint in her eyes after hearing about his request. It's nothing big like the toilets. I promise I won't destroy the house again, he said with his hands on his chest. Beretta sighed and looked over the list he gave her. Alright, young master. We'll be buying these materials in the next town over. We'll be returning before sunset. Beretta and a bunch of other young maids prepared for the journey. After hearing that the young master wanted to buy some peculiar materials, a lot of the maids immediately offered their services to him. They were mostly still grateful for the toilets and the showers, but inwardly, they were expecting another great invention from the genius young master. They wanted to be the first ones to witness it. Michael waved at them as they set off. He inwardly rejoiced. Having rich parents perfectly enabled him to complete his projects with little to no obstacles. It would be like hell if he didn't have money in this medieval world. After waiting patiently, the maids finally returned with a rucksack full of materials he asked for. Michael immediately rummaged through the bag and saw vials of essential oils and most importantly, lye. Lye and animal fat were two of the main ingredients in creating soap, so he requested Beretta to procure a lot of them. And she didn't disappoint. Michael immediately set off out into the forest towards his project room near the mountain. Come back for dinner, young master. Beretta shouted. She was already used to the young master going off on his own, so she didn't make a big fuss out of it. Chapter 11 Shampoo. Michael walked over to the kitchen house, with most of the maids cooking something over the fire. They immediately greeted him with smiles once they saw him walk into the room. Young master, we made your favorite beef stew. Would you like to eat it now, young master? Young master. Beretta walked over to Michael and noticed that he had the same mischievous grin on his face when he showed them the faucet. It was even more suspicious now since he had his hands on his back, obvious that he was hiding something. I just wanted a little bit of feedback about my new project. The moment he said those words, the maids immediately stopped what they were doing and offered themselves to the young master. Ooh. What is it, young master? Did it have something to do with what you bought last time? He nodded and finally showed them the bar of white soap behind his back. And immediately, they smelled a pleasant smell reminiscent of flowers wafting from the strange bar in his hands. This is called hand soap. It is used to clean your hands, body, and everything else. Michael walked over to the faucet and let the water run over his hands. Then, he rubbed the soap, and immediately a thick lather bubbled up, covering his entire hand. They knew what a soap was, but the one in the young master's hands was completely different. It smelled better than perfume, and was also a lot bubblier than even the most expensive soap in the market. Michael washed the lather off his hands and showed it to the maids. See? One of the maids got too curious and took Michael's hands and smelled it herself. And once she did, she immediately fell in love with the lingering scent on his hands. Oh my god. Young master, this is even better than cologne. How does it smell so good even after you washed it off? The rest of the maids wanted a smell too, but Michael stopped them. If you want, you could try it for yourself, he said, giving them the bar of soap. They immediately fought against each other to be the first ones to use the soap. But eventually, all of them got a chance to use the soap. This cleans my hands so fast, said one of the maids. She would have needed at least 10 minutes to scrub the coal off her hands through normal means. But with the soap, it only took her less than a minute to get rid of everything. Not only that, but her hands smelled great after it too. Seeing the maids immediately loving the soap, Michael felt satisfied. With soap and water, there was finally a standard of cleanliness in this household. To thank you for all your service, I prepared these for all of you, Michael said as he walked outside and brought out a big rucksack. He then gave everyone their own bar of soap and a vial of a strange blue liquid. As expected, the maids screamed in excitement once they received this very generous gift. They were almost so excited with the bar of soap that they almost ignored the strange liquid included with it. Young master, what is this? Said one of the maids, putting the vial over her eyes. That one's called a shampoo. Just try to put that shampoo on your hair during your shower, and you'll see the effects. One of the maids took out the cork from the vial and smelled the shampoo liquid. The scent was as, if not better, than the soap because the essential oils were much more concentrated in it. The maids all looked at each other, with their eyes filled with a competitive fire. Then, silence. After a few seconds, one of them finally had enough and shouted, "I'll take a bath first." After that, the maids all rushed to say the same. Me too. I said it first. You've taken a shower this morning. No, I haven't. You're the one who uses the shower every day. After a lot of arguing amongst the maids, a good half of them immediately returned to their dorms to try out this new soap and shampoo that the young master gave them. Meanwhile, the rest of the unfortunate maids were forced to continue the work in the kitchen house. After a while, the maids returned from the dormitory, all smelling like they had just been frolicking in a field of flowers. Not only that, their skin seemed to be glistening under the light, as if all the dirt and imperfections had been scrubbed off. Even they couldn't help but touch themselves with how smooth their skin became after using the soap to clean their body. But perhaps the most startling difference was their hair. It became voluptuous and silky, as if they had been coated in honey. Their hair looked healthier as well, with barely any knots or straight ends. The other maids would have praised the soap, but they immediately went back to the dormitory to try it out themselves. Meanwhile, the refreshed maids all turned to Michael and praised him again for his generous gift. "Young master, if you give these to any lady, then I'm sure they'll marry you in an instant." "Yes, he'll be quite popular with the ladies with this." Michael wasn't thinking about girls and romance for now. His mind was far older than his body because of his previous life. Right now, he was focused on increasing the standard of living in this place, starting with the mansion. Now that he was done with water and proper sanitation, his next course of business was a little bit more complicated. This world still measured time through sundials, hourglasses, and candles. For his next project, Michael wanted to create the first mechanical clock. Since it was purely made out of gears and metal workings, it was completely doable with his current abilities. Of course, he still needed to practice his 2-star, Metal Bend, spell to achieve the kind of precision needed for this kind of project. Metal Bend, Chapter 12. Clamoring for soap. The next day, one of the maids went over to the town closest to the Vanderbilt estate, Kingsbridge. This was a sophisticated place made for those living above normal means. This was where royals, businessmen, and other such wealthy individuals stayed and lived their lives. The maid named Castella walked over to an establishment that rich women frequently visited. This was a place where wives, their daughters, and their maids frequented to have tea and share some juicy gossip. Since Castella was a maid of the Vanderbilt estate, she had access to these high-class establishments. "Do you like it? My husband bought it from me overseas. It's made from the Pearl of the Orient," said one of the madams, showing off the pretty necklace on her neck to the rest of the women sitting at the table. "How envious. I shall make my hubby buy one for me and my daughter here as well," said the woman opposite her, fanning her handkerchief. The group of women laughed to themselves. But even if there was a jovial atmosphere among them, there was a hidden competitiveness within them as well. This wasn't just a place to socialize, this was a place to brag. They wanted to show off how wealthy they were, how much their husbands spent to pamper them, and how much better their lives were compared to others. It was a vicious environment. If one wasn't grossly wealthy, then they didn't deserve to participate in these kinds of gatherings. Just then, the door to the tea party opened, bringing with it the ringing of a bell. Normally, the wealthy madams would have simply given one look at Castell and immediately turned their heads away the moment they saw her maid uniform. However, there was a certain smell in the air that they couldn't simply ignore. Castell walked inside and bowed to the madams, before taking her place among the maids in the next room. The madams and their rich daughters all turned their noses up as they smelled the fragrant scent of flowers in the air. It was strong, but it wasn't imposing like perfume. It was subtle yet made its mark on their noses all the same. "Do you smell that?" the madam wearing the pearl necklace asked. "I smell it too, auntie. It's really good," said one of the young daughters at the table. "Be honest, ladies. Did any of you spray your perfume?" The table shook their heads. Just then, Castell walked over to the table with a tray in her hand carrying tea and biscuits. "I apologize, madams. The Vanderbilt mistress cannot attend today's meeting because she is currently out of town for the entire month. She has asked me to come in her stead and serve you the best biscuits and tea in our warehouse." Castell didn't notice that everyone at the table was looking at her with intense eyes. The scent intensified the moment she came near them, as if she was a bundle of flowers put together. Even though the madams immediately noticed her aromatic scent, Castell herself thought that nobody noticed the difference. The reason for that was because everyone in the Vanderbilt mansion smelled good. Ever since the young master gave them soap and shampoo, everyone washed themselves with it, no exceptions. That was why Castell's nose was indifferent to her own scent. It was only when the entire table went silent for an entire minute did Castell realize something was different with them. "Have I done something wrong?" she asked them. Finally, the madam with the pearl necklace asked Castell, "What perfume do you use?" Castell was a bit flustered with the question. "Perfume? I'm sorry, madam, but I don't use perfume." The rest of the women at the table shook their heads. "No need to lie. We're all women here. Now, tell us which perfume you bought to make you smell this good." Castell finally understood the situation. "Oh, you must have been smelling my soap," she said, with enthusiasm. "That must not be it. Soaps don't smell this good. Are you lying to us?" asked the madam. "No, madam." Castell vehemently shook her head, causing her hair to whip back and forth. And each time, the scent of her shampoo wafted over to the table. One of the daughters on the table immediately stood up and smelled Castell's hair. "Your hair smells so good. And your skin. It's so soft as well." The rest of the women crowded Castell and examined her. Certainly, her entire body was emanating a natural fragrance that simply could not be achieved by any perfume. It was as if her skin and hair themselves were the ones that smelled good. "Ladies, mind your manners." The madam with the pearl necklace stopped the ladies from crowding Castile too much. "Now, are you certain that you achieved this scent through nothing but soap?" she asked. Castile nodded her head obediently. "Yes, madam. I only used soap to clean my body and something called a shampoo to clean my hair after every shower, bath." The rest of the women at the table slowly sat back down in their seats, completely bewildered by the thought of smelling this good with nothing but soap. "Can you tell us the name of this soap and shampoo? Or better yet, will you sell me some of this material? I am willing to buy it at the price of 1 gold. "Me too. I'll buy it for 1 gold too. Reserve 2 for me. I want to buy 1 for my daughter as well." Before sundown, Castile returned to the Vanderbilt mansion and immediately knocked on the young master's door. "Castile? What's wrong?" Once she entered his room, she immediately told him about what happened to her in the tea establishment. "I'm telling you, young master. Your product will certainly be devoured by a lot of women if you sell it at the market. Those women are not shy about spending money." Michael was intrigued. If a simple soap and shampoo was enough to make the wealthy women of Kingsbridge clamor to buy it at 1 gold a pop, then it might be a good idea to start selling it at the market. Even though he would inherit the riches of the Vanderbilt family in the future, it wouldn't be a bad idea to get some money for himself. If he continued to rely on the Vanderbilt family money, he would have to ask his mother for money each time he needed to buy his materials. But if he had money for himself, he could keep his projects a secret. Chapter 13 Plans to sell. Michael found out that a gold coin was equal to 1,000 silver coins. And a silver coin was worth 1,000 bronze coins. For some context, it turned out that maids like Castile and Beretta earned about 1 gold coin per month, which was considered to be a very generous salary in this world. Normal people lived only on silver and bronze coins, so even having a single gold coin could be considered very rich. The best part about this was that the ingredients needed to create the soap were only about a few hundred bronze coins. Profit was tremendous. "I see, thank you for telling me. If I were to sell this to the market, would you be the one to deliver the goods?" Castile immediately perked up at Michael's request. "Of course, young master. It would be my honor. As long as we sell the soap to those madams, then I'm sure its reputation would spread like wildfire." Michael nodded. Castile described those women as the type of people who like to brag about their luxury. Once other people noticed that they're using his soap, many people would immediately envy them. In this world, those madams were like the early version of influencers back in his original world. "Take with you other maids and buy some more ingredients for the soap. Oh, and buy some more exotic flowers and oils." If he was going to sell them, Michael decided to create different versions of the soap and shampoo. Not everyone liked the floral scent. Castile nodded and walked out of Michael's room with passion burning in her eyes. Now that he was all alone in his room, Michael turned to a single piece of gear in his hands. Using his 2-star spell, Metal Bend, the smallest gear he could create was about the size of an adult hand. It was far too big to create the wristwatch and pocket watch that he envisioned. "I guess I'll just have to settle with a big clock for now." Chatchquan, can you explain to me in detail how the early version of a mechanical clock worked? "Certainly. Mechanical clocks use the combination of gears and weights to create a consistent movement that is useful in timekeeping." Michael laid in his bed as the information washed over his brain. The mechanical knowledge needed for the creation of a clock was far too complicated for him to learn in a single second. He spent the entire night digesting the information, until finally, he understood the concept with the same mastery as an engineer. He was so excited about this project that he almost couldn't sleep. To make himself exhausted, Michael meditated and increased his mana gathering even faster than normal, straining his body till he was tired. All this time, he didn't slack off on growing the mana stones in his body. Right now, the 4 main elemental rocks near his abdomen were the size of a small acorn. He found that the amount of mana those small rocks contained was enough for him to cast 1-star spells continuously for 10 minutes without getting tired. "Chatchquan, can you tell me how my mana compares to other mages?" "I'm sorry, I have insufficient data to have an accurate comparison." This was one of the downsides of keeping his magic a secret. He didn't have any tutor to tell him about the basics of magic. Since he wasn't supposed to know magic, he wasn't supposed to ask questions about them. This led him to have a very shallow understanding of magic and how it worked. He wanted to know a lot more. He wanted to learn other spells, he wanted to know if there were elements present other than the 4 main ones, and he wanted to know the difference between the star ratings of the spells. "I'll have to reveal my magic to my parents at some point. When they return, I'll tell the truth and say that I created the plumbing system using my magic." His goal for doing this was to have an excuse to learn more about magic. Knowing his father, he would immediately order a tutor to teach him everything he needed to know. The next day, Michael started to create the first parts of his clock project. Since the gears needed a lot of precision, he couldn't rush it or else the clock wouldn't work. In the meantime, he tasked some of the maids to help him create the soap and shampoo he was going to sell to the market. Of course, he immediately followed the modern way and created the primitive version of a factory. Some of the maids were in charge of mixing the main ingredients, turning them into a fine powder, while the next set of maids were in charge of mixing those with water. Then, he also created more molds for the soap, where another set of maids slowly poured the mixture to create the perfect rectangle shape. The maids were incredibly enthusiastic about this project since Michael promised them that they could take their own supply of soap and shampoo at the end of the day. And even though Michael said that he would give them some coins as compensation for their work, the maids immediately refused. "There's no need, young master. In the first place, we are hired to help you with everything in your life. And, we are still incredibly thankful for the plumbing system you gave us. It's changed our lives. It is an honor for us to do this work." "Let them do it, young master," Beretta said to Michael. "You don't know how thankful the maids are for your inventions. You'd be giving them no chance to show their thanks if you paid them." Michael was incredibly moved by their sacrifice, but he didn't like it. He lived in a world where proper work was compensated. So, if they weren't going to accept coins, Michael would simply shower them with more modern inventions in the future. Chapter 14 Need to relax. The days passed, with the maids and butlers working hard every day. They finished their chores and tasks for the mansion early in the day, and then immediately went to the backyard and continued to produce rows and rows of soap and shampoo. Meanwhile, Michael was busy constructing his clock project. The hardest part was already over, with most of the gears and mechanisms already produced in his project room. He just needed a little bit more adjustments and he'd finally be ready to piece it all together for it to work. After 2 more days, he finally made a very rudimentary version of a Big Ben clock. It was as big as a cabinet made out of wood, with a simple round face at the very center. And even though the hour and minute hands of the clock were just thin rods of metal, it would do its job properly. "As long as nobody looks inside, it looks decent," Michael said, consoling himself. Since he wasn't a master craftsman just yet, he could only brute force his way into completing the project. If one looked on the inside, they would see gears and pulley ropes haphazardly jammed inside with no care for elegance at all. But of course, he made sure that all the mechanisms worked as intended. Hopefully. If it works, then it doesn't matter how it looks. The good thing about this clock was that it didn't have any power source. The bad thing was that he needed to wind up the crank every day, which would slowly lower the weight inside and make the clock hands move and act like a proper clock. Michael walked to the side and started to wind up the clock by rotating the crank he installed. Ding! A satisfying sound rang out as Michael felt the resistance in the lever increase, signifying that it was at its limit. This was the moment of truth. Michael let go of the crank and finally, tick-tock-tock-tock-tick-tock. The rhythmic sound echoed in the clock as the hands ticked down every second. It worked. Satisfaction gushed over Michael's face. It was hard to create, but it was worth it. "Young master, what is that?" Michael didn't know it, but there was already a crowd of maids and butlers gathered behind him. Their eyes burned with an intense curiosity as they looked at the giant cabinet that rang out with a rhythmic tick-tock sound. "Listen up, everyone. This is called a clock. It is divided into 12 parts, with each part depicting an hour." Michael went into a very long lecture about how clocks worked, but as expected, it was hard for people who had never seen a clock before to understand it. Heck, even people in his previous world had trouble reading a clock even though they knew it all their lives. If this hand moves to the next line, it is equivalent to how long a candle lasts. Once he equated it to candles, which was how people measured time in this world, they quickly understood the concept. "I see, young master. Ooh. Another invention from the young master. He's too smart." Unfortunately, they didn't know how useful a clock was yet. After all, they didn't have to keep careful watch of their time during their daily life. That was about to change. "So, I hereby enforce all of you to only work 8 hours a day, and not a second more." His words were immediately met with confusion. They didn't understand why he would impose such strict rules when doing more work would result in more soaps created, which would lead to a better profit. Michael could have asked them to work all night long to create the soaps, and they would have done so without question. They were under his family's employ, after all. But now, Michael wanted them to work barely half a day. "Young master, why?" the maids asked. "Are you planning on letting go of us?" They were so used to working long hours and working every second of every day that they thought it was normal. But in Michael's world, everyone found out that working too much led to disastrous consequences. People must have a healthy balance of work and life to truly live the way a human was supposed to live. They were not slaves, after all. Although Michael could have treated them that way and earned a lot of money in the process, he was not going to be one of those people. As for why, well, Michael had one simple reason. "If I were put in your place, I wouldn't want to work all day long. That's it. Michael said those words with the same innocence as a child. It endeared him to their hearts all the more for it. The workers of the Vanderbilt mansion felt a warm sensation wash over their chests. How could they have been so lucky as to serve the only young master to treat them not as just maids and butlers, but also humans? Some of them wiped the tears from their eyes and chuckled. Hee hee, young master. We hope you stay with that kind of thinking even in the future. This makes me want to work even harder. Yeah. Let's create more soaps and keep the young master as wealthy as possible. I'll have to do it all night if I have to. The maids and butlers cheered and immediately went over to their stations to create more soaps. Michael shook his head in disappointment. They completely missed his point. Perhaps the reason they want to keep working is that they have nothing better to do. Maybe I should give them something to look forward to after a long hard day's work. He sat on his bed and kept on cycling through his ideas. There were a lot of pastimes in his previous life, but some of them required advanced technology. If I were them, what would I want to do? Then, the idea hit him. He almost couldn't believe that he hadn't thought about it till now. What were the usual pastimes and relaxation spots he usually saw in anime and television? Hot springs. Chapter 15 Hot springs completed the next day, Michael started to work on his hot springs idea. It didn't need to be extremely complicated. He just needed a big pool and a compartment on the bottom for the wood and fire that would heat the water to a comfortable temperature. It was unfortunate that they weren't anywhere near a volcano, which would have been an easy way to get water for the hot springs. But, they could still make do with a man-made one. He asked Chachk-1 for an appropriate space near the house to install the hot springs, and his eye assistant gave him a flat place near the river. He decided to follow the Romans for the design of his hot springs. They used hot air and smoke to heat the flooring and water of their cold area, or their bathhouses. He started by creating a foundation at the bottom, filled with tiny pillars where the smoke and fire would spread. Over those pillars would be the actual flooring of the bathhouse. He used a 2-star spell, Boulder Carve, to turn large chunks of rock on the ground into the needed pillars and flooring for the actual bathhouse. Boulder Carve, Earth Element. This magic allows the user to chip and carve out pieces of stone from a large boulder. He used that with the combination of the very useful 1-star spell, Stone Mend, which allowed the stones to seamlessly connect without the use of cement. Stone Mend, Earth Element. This magic allows the user to combine similar earth materials into one piece as if they were connected from the start. Since it was such a large undertaking, Michael couldn't hide his magic powers anymore. The maids witnessed as reality started to shift and then beginning from Michael's hands and slowly manifested into a glowing green aura around his body. They gasped, unable to believe that a 5-year-old boy was able to lift a boulder larger than a bear with only his magic. The young master. He's casting magic. I shouldn't be surprised, but he's really using earth magic. That's no easy spell, either. That's a 2-star difficulty magic. Some of the clueless maids tilted their heads. Is it really surprising for the young master to be good at magic? Most geniuses learn magic at the age of 5 as well. The more knowledgeable butlers looked at the young maid. Yes, in terms of geniuses, then it isn't that surprising. But the young master's different. How? She asked. Have you ever seen a magic tutor came to this mansion? Have you ever seen the madam teach the young master about earth magic? Once the elderly butler pointed it out, a lot of the younger maids finally realized how much of a monstrous genius Michael was. All the spells he was casting right now were self-learned. Nobody taught him anything. This meant that Michael picked up those spells either through observation or intuition, both of which were a feat only the talented and monstrous geniuses in history were capable of. Also. How long have we been watching him cast those spells? Almost an hour? Yet, he's barely broken a sweat. How big is his mana capacity? Sir and Madam got really lucky with their only son. Not only is he a genius craftsman in the making, but he also has the potential to be a wizard as well. Madam will be ecstatic once she learns about this. Her son is a genius at earth magic. It wouldn't be for a while later when they finally learn that Michael was not only proficient with earth magic, but also with the other 3 main elemental mana as well. But, that's a story for another time. After a couple more days, the open bathhouse was finally completed. It was quite a big pool if Michael compared it to the bathhouses of his previous life. But in terms of his current mansion, it was just like a small puddle. He separated the pool into 2 sections, one for men and one for women. At the end of the workday, Michael gathered all the maids and butlers at the entrance of his hot springs. Even when they were outside, they could feel the heat coming off the entrance. Young master, what did you create this time? Beretta asked. Michael took a bundle of firewood and chucked it towards the opening to the basement of the bathhouse, letting the fire get hotter. This is a hot spring. After working hard all day, you can spend the rest of the day relaxing and immersing yourself in hot water. Trust me, it's invigorating. The prospect of bathing in hot water after working all day long seemed like the perfect idea to relax. This looks amazing. I can't wait. You've truly outdone yourself this time, young master. My face is getting younger from the steam alone. Everyone walked into the bathhouse with curious and excited looks on their faces. Michael directed the butlers to the right side, while the maids were led to the left side. You take off your clothes here, and then you can take a towel and rinse yourselves. Once he told them what to do, the maids and butlers immediately rushed toward the hot springs. And just as Michael was about to go to the men's bath, some of the maids pulled him back. Young master, where are you going? Going to take a bath? The young maid shook her head. With those burly men? No, young master. You'll come with us. Michael looked at the smiling young maids and felt his cheeks redden. He forgot. He was 5 years old, which meant that people were treating him as nothing more than a precious, innocent child. Come bath with us. We'll wash your back. Michael started to back away. No thanks. Most of the maids were young, and only about 20 years old. Compared to his age when he died in his previous world, they were the ones to be considered as babies. Oh please, young master. We've bathed you when you were a wee little child before. Don't be shy. The group of clueless maids dragged Michael to the women's bath. It's fine. This is fine, right? I'm only 5 years old. I just won't look, so it's okay, right? Chapter 16 Reborn. Soap and shampoo. The sounds of excited giggling and splashing echoed through the hot springs. It sounded like the maids were having a lot of fun relaxing and joshing around in the rejuvenating hot water. Michael wouldn't know, of course. He remained on the sidelines of the pool, with his eyes covered by his hands. Young master, come join us. They teased. But the adorable young master simply shook his head. From their perspective, he just looked like an embarrassed kid. The young master is so cute. Michael used all his willpower to suppress his inner manly desires. But the maids weren't making it easy. My skin is so smooth now. Look, touch me. Kaya. Don't touch me there. Hee. I never knew you were so blessed with those huge, shush. You're one to talk. I can't believe you're able to sit with that large behind. A few hours later, everyone was out of the hot springs wearing a robe around their bodies. They had an otherworldly expression on their face, as if they had just experienced nirvana. They had never felt so relaxed and clean in their life. Young master, the milk you've requested is here. A butler said as he got out of the carriage carrying a big barrel of milk. Of course, one of the essential things to do after relaxing in the hot springs was to drink milk. Drinking this would help replenish all the lost sweat they shed due to the hot temperatures of the bath. He even showed them the proper stance, one hand gulping down milk, and the other posted on their waist. It's so good, I might melt. So this is what relaxing feels like. There was nothing but praise for the hot springs. These maids and butlers started work even when they were a child, which meant that they had never experienced something like this before. It was as if they became 10 years younger, with their cheeks smooth and reddish. Michael felt satisfied. He sat on his chair and watched them talk and enjoy the night under the stars. He taught them how comfortable life could be. He didn't want to stop. He hoped that he could show it to this world as well. The next morning, the clock bell rang, signaling the start of the new day. The maids and butlers woke up early and got to work. All the relaxing yesterday re-energized their bodies to the fullest, allowing them to work with 200% efficiency. They pumped up water to refill the tank, they cleaned the mansion, they changed the sheets, and they tended to the garden in record time. The bell for noon hadn't even rang yet, but every chore in the mansion was already done. They immediately went to work on the soaps, taking the dried molds out of the sun and into the mansion for safekeeping. By helping the young master with the soap and shampoo, they were hoping that they could repay all the good he'd given them. Finally, after a few days of work, Michael finally had a good stock of soaps and shampoo with different variations each. The mansion was filled with crates carrying stacks and stacks of soap, and on top of those were vials of soap by the hundreds. I'll be delivering the product to the madams, said Castell. There were already some pre-orders from the madams who witnessed firsthand how soap and shampoo could be even more fragrant than some perfume. Those few people already ordered about a box worth of soap and shampoo for themselves, and not only that, because of the word-of-mouth gossip, there were some madams who personally approached Castell to buy one for themselves. That's great, said Michael. The butlers loaded the crates onto the carriage to be delivered personally by Castell. But before she left to go to the next town, she turned back to Michael to ask him an important question. Young master. If they ask me where I got this from? What shall I tell them? The maids and butlers kept a careful silence about the young master and his inventions. When they wrote to his parents, they even lied to them and said that nothing eventful happened in the mansion during their trip. This was a crime worthy of termination, but for the young master, it was worth it. If I want to keep this business a secret from my parents, Then I need to go under a different name. Or better yet, why not a company? Tell them that you got them from a company called Reborn. Castile took Michael's words and nodded to herself. Reborn. Reborn soap. Reborn shampoo. That is a very good name for a company, young master. After all, ladies would feel like they were reborn once they tried your product. Yeah. She didn't know that Atlan only thought about that name because he was literally reborn from another world. Castile personally traveled through the town and delivered the boxes of soap and shampoo to the mansions of their very first customers. The madams and daughters excitedly opened their boxes of goodies and smelled it for themselves. And just as it was promised, it smelled as amazing as Castile said it would be. They didn't even waste any more time and ordered their own maids to prepare a bath for them. They wanted to try out the soap and shampoo at this instant. Apologies. The madam had been waiting for these soaps and shampoo for quite a while now that she's been moody lately. This is the promised compensation, and a couple more for your troubles. The madam's butler handed Castile a purse, hefty with gold coins. Just from weight alone, she knew that it was far more than what she expected. And just when she was about to leave, the butler waved down her carriage. Ahem. If we were to acquire more of these goods, can we count on you to deliver them? Castile couldn't help but smile. Yes, please. Oh, can we know the name of the man I have to thank for making my madam happy? Even though Castile wanted to brag about her young master, she kept her quiet. This is brought to you by a company called Reborn. Unfortunately, that is all I can say. Reborn. Very well. Castile finished her deliveries for the night, and the reactions from their customers were as ecstatic as the first madam. A day later, their husbands immediately noticed the difference, earning the madams a lot of love and attention just from their smell alone. Not only that, as they paraded themselves throughout the town, all the other ladies got envious of how their skin and hair were so smooth and fragrant. Of course, as those madams started bragging, the name Reborn soap and Reborn shampoo imprinted in the minds of the rich people in Kingsbridge as the must-buy premier soap and shampoo brand in the market. Chapter 17. 1,000 gold. Since the price of a pair of soap and shampoo was 1 gold coin, and the costs of all the ingredients to create those pair of items only cost around 500 bronze coins, the profit he got from selling a pair of them was around 999,500 bronze coins. It was insane to think about. That was the profit from just a pair of soap and shampoo. All the crates Castile delivered each contained about 100 pairs. This meant that each box gave about 100 gold coins. In total, Michael was now looking at 1,000 gold coins all spread around in his bedroom. Hey Chatchkwan, if you were to convert all these gold coins into the US dollar, how much would it be? The value of the gold coins in your possession varies greatly due to the difference in purity as well as the condition of each coin. Since you have 1,000 gold coins, each with a different purity, the money in your possession is roughly worth around 10,000 US dollars. Michael took a deep breath. That kind of money was considered very rich in third world countries. And since it took about a week to create all the soap and shampoo they sold yesterday, that would mean that Michael could earn about 40,000 US dollars worth of gold coins every month. And if he did it for a year, that would net him just shy of $500,000. Back in his previous world, a monthly salary of $10,000 would have been enough to live relatively comfortably. But if he earned $40,000 a month, he would join the elite class of the top 1% of people in first world countries like America. Earning this much felt like cheating. All the work was being done by the maids and butlers, while he just stayed around the mansion without doing anything. I guess I'll store this money for now. Michael wasn't short on funds for now. If he wanted to buy something he didn't want his parents to know, then he could be assured that he could buy it for himself. A few more days passed and Castella came running into Michael's door with the biggest smile on her face. Young master. Young master. Michael opened the door and rubbed his eyes. The morning bell from the clock hadn't even rung yet, but Castella looked like she had been up for hours already. What is it? The soap and shampoo was becoming very popular, young master. All the gossip I've heard from the other maids in town is all about the Reborn soap and shampoo. That's good, Michael said as he yawned and stretched his body. It was probably because he was born into the richest family in the world, but Michael wasn't really that excited about the prospect of earning more money. Having 1,000 gold coins seemed sufficient enough. After all, the things he wanted to buy hadn't been invented yet. He was the one who had to create them, so he didn't want to buy anything from the markets in this world. Wait. Why am I thinking that this world is just a medieval world? I completely forgot. This is a world of magic too. I have something I want. Can you buy it for me in secret? Michael whispered. Castile picked up on Michael's clues and entered his bedroom for a private conversation. Is there anything specific you want, young master? Michael nodded. First of all, I can't trust you, right? Castile nodded and bumped her first on her chest. Of course, young master. She said, a little bit offended that he didn't think she was completely loyal to him at this point. He cleared his throat and summoned the fire from the tip of his finger. This was one of the very first spells he learned, the 1-star, Ember. "I can use magic," he said. "Fire? Young master, you are adept with the fire element as well?" Castella was not surprised that Michael could use magic. She was surprised that he could cast a spell other than the earth element. "Is there something wrong with that?" he asked, completely oblivious. "Young master, having mastery of dual elements is considered to be very rare." Michael looked at Castell, trying to see if she was serious. He thought it wasn't anything special. After all, a fire spell wasn't the only thing he could use. He raised his hand and summoned fire on the tip of his finger, a small rock on the other, and a blob of water on the next. Then a gust of wind rotated the 3 elements into constant movement around his hand, with enough mastery to weave them around his fingers. Castell nearly tumbled backward once she saw this. 4.4 elements. That's supposed to be impossible, young master. I can't even call you a genius anymore. So, this is not normal? Of course, it's not. Castell screamed. Huh. Michael learned to be a little more careful with showing his quadruple mastery over the elements. "I think it's best if you only show your mastery over the earth element for now, young master. At least that can be explained by you inheriting your mother's talent." Castell made a very good suggestion. A few minutes later, Castell finally calmed down after Michael fetched her a cup of water. "That was a shock, young master. Sorry about that." She took a gulp and turned to him. "By the way, what was it that you wanted me to buy?" Michael gave her the pouch containing 1,000 gold coins. "I want you to buy any book that describes magic, mana, and spells. Specifically, I want things that can teach me how to cast other spells." Castell took another big gulp of water. "Books. Do you mean magic scrolls, young master?" "What is that?" "A magic scroll is something that mages use to learn different spells. Most of them can be bought in the local wizard tower." Chapter 18, Introducing Chess Magic Towers. You say. Tell me more. A magic tower is a tall spire where all veteran mages and aspiring wizards gather. The upper floors are restricted for locals, but they have their first floor open for business. There, they sell books and scrolls, and one could even employ a mage through them. Michael was incredibly interested in the magic tower. He imagined it to be like the fantasy books he read, with moving paintings, floating floors, and secret chambers. "Have you been there before?" he asked Castell. "Once. When I was young, I was fortunate enough to chance upon one of the mages showing his magic spells to the public. It was breathtaking. I would have wanted to become a mage if I had the aptitude," Castell reminisced. Michael suddenly looked up at Castell. "The mages showed off his spells? Is that a normal occurrence?" Castell nodded. "Not too often though, mostly on special occasions. The Guild of Arcana performs so that the local people are reassured that they are safe under their banner." "Oh, the Guild of Arcana is the organization in charge of the magic tower." Castell went on to talk more about the magic tower, but Michael was barely listening. He was too enchanted by the fact that he could potentially witness a veteran mage perform one of his spells in person. After all, his Chachkwon could analyze its theory and allow him to cast it himself. It was a very promising prospect, one that tempted Michael to get out of the mansion for the first time and visit the magic tower. Kingsbridge town was only about 2 to 3 hours by carriage away from here, so it wasn't that far. "Young master, are you listening?" Michael trusted his Chachkwon to listen to him. He didn't have to pay attention. "Can you summarize what she said?" "The magic tower is managed by the Guild of Arcana. They are a nationwide organization in charge of keeping the peace among mages and the people." He simply reiterated Chachkwon's answer and impressed Castell with his listening skills. "Do you think I can go to the magic tower?" Castell was taken aback and immediately shook her head. "I'm sorry, young master. For a person of your stature, it would cause far too much fanfare. Your mother and father will immediately be notified once you leave the estate. They would immediately return home and fire us all for letting that happen." Michael kept forgetting that he was the youngest son of the Vanderbilt name, the richest family in the entire world. Even in his previous world, the children of celebrities would immediately be crowded by paparazzis. This world looked to be no different. "Fine. There's no rush," he said. "That is the best course of action, young master. There's no doubt that your mother and father would want you to visit the magic tower once they find out about your magic aptitude anyway." Michael nodded to himself. It would be advantageous to come to the magic tower with his parents. The mages would surely want to curry favor with them, which Michael would take advantage of by making them perform spells in front of him. They would see it as nothing more than a child getting curious, but Michael would secretly learn their spells. Another day passed, and Michael was starting to get bored. Ever since Castell told him about the magic tower, he couldn't keep his mind off it. "My mind is too active. Is there something I can do to keep me mentally active?" Just then, Michael remembered something. Before he died in his previous life, he was addicted to an online game he played on his computer. This game became quite popular during that time even though it had existed for more than 1,000 years before the modern age. It wasn't a role-playing game, it wasn't a multiplayer game, it was much more simple than that. It was online chess. Since he spent every day in the confines of his own home, he couldn't really play the board game version of chess. But now, he had the chance to. Michael didn't waste time and got out of his bed. He rushed past the busy maids washing dishes and gave them a curt greeting. Then, he walked into the forest to find a big tree with a thick stump. Using the one-star spell, Splinter Wood, he chopped down the tree one slice at a time. After a while, he looked at the fallen tree and envisioned a perfect 8x8 grid, perfect for a chessboard. A couple of hours later, Michael emerged from the forest carrying a thin rectangle board and a couple of wooden statues in a small bag. The clock bell had already rung, meaning everyone's work was already done and it was time for relaxation. Most maids immediately went into the hot springs, but some butlers got too tired of bathing in hot water every day. They spent their relaxation doing nothing but lounging on their chairs. Thump. The butlers were jolted awake as Michael plopped down the chessboard onto the table. "Young master, you're here," they greeted him. Michael sat opposite the board and looked at the butlers with a mischievous grin on his face. "Let's play a game," Michael said in a weird voice, as he arranged the chess pieces onto the board. "What is that?" they all asked simultaneously. "This is chess, an intellectual game for distinguished gentlemen. If any one of you can beat me, then I will give you 100 gold coins." The butlers perked up upon hearing the juicy sound of a bag of coins being put on the table. "Is that real, young master?" one of the butlers asked. "Only if you beat me, of course." The veteran butler with white hair and mustache pushed the younger ones away and faced the young master. I am nothing but an intellectual and distinguished gentleman, young master." Michael smiled. "I knew you'd find this interesting, Sebastian. Good. This game is called chess and here are the rules." The butlers listened intently, with their faces slowly furrowing as they heard how simple the game looked. Just capture the king? It was easy, they thought. Chapter 19 Chess craze. The hours passed and the maids finally returned from their relaxation at the hot springs. But as soon as they walked out, they were welcomed with the sight of all the butlers huddled over a single table. Not only that, they were quite noisy too. No, the best move would be to move the horse there. Ah, but he'll be captured by the bishop at that point. You're all missing the point. The young master is just one move away from cornering the king. Michael picked up the crude version of the queen piece to capture his opponent's pawn, cornering the king and giving it no options left other than to surrender. "Checkmate," Michael said, with a proud smile on his face. Sebastian didn't have the cool and dignified aura he always had. The man's white hair was in disarray as he kept on rubbing his head every time Michael attacked him with his versatile queen piece. Even his signature mustache looked like it had lost all its wax and ended up sagging to his neck. I surrender, young master." The rest of the butlers applauded at the young master's convincing win. Sebastian was thoroughly beaten through 20 games, dispelling the thought that this chess game was as easy as they thought. Even though they were all proud of their intellect because of their training as butlers, they couldn't seem to compare to the young master himself. At the end, the rest of the butlers were convening with Sebastian about the next smartest move, but even with their combined help, they couldn't capture the queen that decimated their pieces. "Don't feel bad. I had a head start against you, after all." Michael peaked at around 1,500 in online chess, which was considered quite good for an amateur. He didn't even have to use Chat 1 to figure out the moves to defeat Sebastian. There were a lot of errors with your endgame positioning. Would you like me to point out your mistakes and give you the best moves to do in those situations? Not right now. These guys are way too weak to be my opponent right now. Maybe I'll need your help once they get better. Probably in 100 years, ha ha ha. I have estimated that Sebastian will be able to beat you in chess within 2 years. He has shown great talent in it. What? Michael's pride was a little bit wounded when he heard that. After all, he spent more than 5 years playing online chess consistently before he got to the rating he was right now. "Young master, just one more game," Sebastian begged. "Oh, look at that. The bell's ringing. Guess I got to go to bed. See ya," Michael said, moving his ears to the non-existent sound in the air. The butlers continued to play amongst themselves until the night came. But even as Sebastian closed his eyes and tried to sleep, he couldn't help but see the chessboard in his dreams, with the young master opposite him. But even in his sleep, he couldn't beat the young master. The next day, Michael created more chessboards and pieces to satisfy the cravings of the butlers. As soon as the bell rang and their workday ended, they quickly went over to the tables and played chess amongst each other. It was as if a frenzy appeared in the mansion, infecting all the intellectuals who wanted to test their mettle against others. Sebastian proved himself to be a head above the others, as now he was the one who went undefeated against all the other butlers. But as they kept playing and playing, the skill level among the butlers got higher and higher. The good camaraderie among them allowed them to learn from each other, with the winner teaching the loser about how to get better. It wasn't just them that got addicted, but some of the maids also got acquainted in the game. Castile was one such person, and she quickly fell in love with the game and the complexity within the moves. The mansion was now filled with sounds of pieces hitting the board, as well as the occasional yelps as they got their pieces taken because of a mistake. More days passed and finally, it was time for another shipment of soaps and shampoo to their new customers. After the rich madams and their daughters showed off their new smell to their friends, it immediately sparked an intense desire to get one for themselves. But because the Reborn soap and shampoo wasn't available to the market yet, it became some sort of a local legend within the community of wives and madams. This, in turn, pushed demand through the roof. Castile was already contacted by the madams that their friends want to buy loads and loads of their product. Thankfully, Michael was able to foresee this and up the scale of production on the soap and shampoo. Now, Castile was on her way to deliver the crates of soap and shampoo to those new eager customers. "Oh my! I can even smell it from here," said a wealthy woman as Castile dragged the crate right to her doorstep. "Of course," replied Castile with a smile. "That is why Reborn soap and shampoo is so popular right now. Well, I consider myself very fortunate that I was one of the few that can buy this item." Castile smiled. "Would you like to go in for tea?" asked the madam, clearly trying to curry favor with Castile. "Oh, I wouldn't want to impose, madam. Please. It's no big deal. And, there's still so much we have to talk about. Some of my friends have been wanting to buy a box for themselves as well, maybe you can help them." Castile, smelling the scent of gold, finally acquiesced and went in for a tea with the madam. The two of them sipped chamomile and ate biscuits near the garden. "Oh, I guess that's perhaps the most interesting thing that happened today," said a well-dressed man lounging in his chair. "Please forgive my husband. He's been too bored lately," said the madam. But then, Castile had an idea. She looked at the madam's husband and said, "Bored, sir? Perhaps I might interest you in a little game called chess?" Chapter 20 Distinguished Gentleman, and that would be checkmate, sir, Castile said as she cornered the man's king with her bishop. The man, instead of being angry that he lost the game, became incredibly excited. "This is exhilarating. There are so many possibilities in the moves that I can't help but try to think about moves 5 turns ahead." Castile laughed. She was like him when she first learned about chess. "This game called chess. Can I buy one for myself? I simply must tell my friends about this. They are going to have a blast." This was an unexpected turn of events. She only brought her own chessboard because she was bored whenever they traveled through the carriage. She would play by herself and try to improve her skill through imagination. When the sir mentioned he was bored, she simply wanted to play a game of chess with him because she wanted to play it as well. She would have never thought that it would lead to another possible source of income for the Reborn company. "Very well, sir. I will ask my employer to provide you with chessboards." Later in the evening, Castile reported the incident to Michael. "Sure, why not?" "Very well, sir. How much should we sell a board set? 1 gold coin each?" "No, that's too low. How about 10 gold coins each?" Castile considered chess as an expensive item because Michael constructed each piece himself, requiring a lot of effort and time from the young master himself. The maids and butlers couldn't do it because they didn't have the magic nor craftsmanship to create the intricate statuettes for the chess pieces. In her opinion, a single board should cost around 100 gold coins. "No, that's too expensive. We should sell it for around 100 bronze coins," Michael said, rubbing his chin. "Bronze coins? Not gold coins, young master. Isn't that too low?" Michael shook his head. "What do you think will happen once we put the chessboard into the market and it costs around 1 gold coin? People would want to buy it?" Castile answered. Michael nodded. "Yes, but what if they can't afford it? What do you think would happen after that?" Castile was stumped. "They would want to save money for it." "No. What would happen is that other people will produce their own chessboards at a much lower price. They will sell it and earn much more than us because there are a lot of people who would buy it." That kind of practice was very normal in his previous world. If a popular brand released a new product, there would immediately be a lot of fake products swarming the market and being sold at a much lower price. "There's nothing special about a chessboard. It's just made of wood and a couple of pieces. Anyone can make that," Michael said. It was only then that Castile realized Michael's words. No one would want to buy a chessboard from them at an extremely high price, when they could just make one themselves. "I think I get it, young master. If we sell it at a low price, a lot of people would still be able to afford them and buy them from us instead of other people. Michael was also thinking about one thing that this world didn't have: branding. Sometimes, it was much better to improve branding rather than earning money. That was what increased the profits of companies in his previous world into global heights. How much did we earn from the Reborn soap and shampoo delivery today? Michael asked. Castile gave him an even bigger leather pouch than the one last time. About 3,500 gold coins, young master. Michael held about $35,000 worth of gold coins in his hands. This was the most amount of money he had in his previous life. And to think he earned this in about a week. Michael was blown away. But since he didn't have anything to do with this money, it was better to invest it in his company instead. Take this money and hire some woodcraftsmen or mages to create the chessboards and pieces, Michael said as he pushed the leather pouch back to Castile's hands. Understood, young master. And before she left his room, Michael had one last thing to say. Oh, and introduce the game as Reborn Chess. We need them to know it's ours. The next day, Castile once again set off into Kingsbridge, but this time, it was to deliver chessboards to the Sir's mansion. She arrived at his estate, which was already full of gentlemen acquaintances he invited. Michael created 10 chessboards for this shipment, but the next orders would be made by other craftsmen. Oh, here she is, gentlemen. She is the one who introduced me to this sophisticated game. Castile was met with a lot of curious gazes from the men clad in gentlemen's suits. Judging from their stature alone, she could guess that they were the intellectual type of people. Greetings, sirs and madams. I am here to deliver the chessboards you have ordered, she said as she laid down the board to the table. What say you we play one game to show them the rules, the Sir said. It would be my pleasure, Castile replied. After about an hour, the table was crowded with gentlemen rubbing their chins and adjusting their monocles. They were intensely focused on the game, mumbling to themselves about which move they would have made if they were in the man's place. And once again, that is checkmate, sir. The rest of the spectators gasped, only now noticing that Castile's one move completely conquered the chessboard. There was no move left for the king to run away to. Golly. Oh my. The losing man looked very happy despite being bested by Castile yet again. Do you see, gentlemen? This game is the perfect mental battle for men like us. It is as if we are generals barking orders to our army. The rest of the men went silent. It was only a few seconds later when one man with a monocle broke the ice. You shouldn't have moved your king to that place. You should have used your bishop to defend that last pawn, he said, lecturing the man. His words seemed to ignite a lively discussion amongst the gentlemen. You are completely wrong. The best move have been, no, clearly he should have castled much earlier. Look at you, saying the wrong things. What he should have done is, actually, let me show you. Why don't we play a game right now? You can't. I'll be using the board next. Let's play a game to see who'll use it next. You're on. Chapter 21 Spreading Chess. The group of distinguished gentlemen quickly settled down once Castile presented them with 9 more boards to play with. They quickly got engulfed with the frenzy, playing chess game after chess game with seemingly no intention to ever stop. When one of them lost, the other man would brag and ridicule the loser, prompting the losing man to become even more engulfed in trying to learn more about chess to finally win. And when they finally won, the euphoria they experienced was enough to get them addicted to the game and chase that feeling once again. The one who lost would also want to become better so that they wouldn't lose ever again. It was a vicious cycle, and it all ended up benefiting the Reborn company. One of the men approached Castile. She noted that he was the only man who didn't wear a gentleman's suit like the others. He wore a dark robe with intricate runes stitched onto his chest. Would you be able to procure 100 more boards and pieces for us? How many would you like? Castile asked. 100. No, 1,000. At least, 100 now and more later. Can you do it? Castile seemed to have underestimated how addicted the men were to chess. 100. Would need at least 2 days, sir. The robed man nodded while nibbling on his fingernails. Okay. As soon as possible. You need to deliver them at the magic tower in town, you're familiar with that, right? Castile nodded. And just as she thought, this robed man was a bona fide mage from the magic tower. She guessed as much after seeing his weird attire. My friends at the tower will love this game, I'm sure of it. This is the perfect game for mages to exercise their intelligence. Castile kept thinking that the young master would love to know that his invention was now spreading to the magic tower itself. By the way, what's the name of this game again? The game is called Reborn Chess. More days passed, and something weird seemed to happen in Kingsbridge town. All of a sudden, a new upstart company called Reborn was starting to take over the gossip and leisure time of everyone in town. The ladies were all talking about nothing but the miraculous soap and shampoo that was rumored to even make an ugly toad into a beautiful princess after just one Washington. Everyone wanted to bathe with Reborn soap and shampoo. That was the consensus within the women community, which meant that the other soap manufacturers and companies were getting left behind. What do you mean you don't know how to make it? It's soap. If they can do it, we can do it too, said one of the major soap manufacturers to his employees. It's impossible, sir. It's completely different from what we and everyone else makes. I don't even know if they use the same materials as us. The boss of the soap manufacturer had no choice but to bury his head in his desk. No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't replicate the scent and lather of the Reborn soap. Reborn. Where did this unknown company come from? Cursed the man. To clear his head, the man walked to his factory where most of his soap was produced. But instead of seeing hard-working men mixing the big cauldrons and fanning the fire, they were all huddled towards one table and concentrated on something other than work. He should have captured the pawn. Yes. Now, his rook is in trouble. The boss walked over to the table and saw two of his veteran employees playing with some strange wooden pieces on a wooden board. He was ready to reprimand his workers about lazing off work, but after watching the game for a few minutes, he too was intrigued with its complexity. He wanted to play it too. That game looks fun, he said. What's it called? The workers didn't even look back at him and answered his question. It's called Reborn Chess. Reborn. Sigh. The man simply passed out. The business is going well, young master. I've been contacted by a lot of wealthy parties looking to buy soap and shampoo by the crates. There's also some merchants who wish to purchase our products hoping to resell them in other towns. As for Reborn Chess, it's spreading quite rapidly as well. Our biggest customer right now is the Magic Tower, with most mages buying one set for themselves. I had to employ about 50 craftsmen from different towns just to accommodate the demand. Michael sat in his bed and listened to Castell's report about his secret company, Reborn. He didn't think it would grow this fast. The demand for his products far exceeded what they could even currently produce. Case in point, Michael knew that he couldn't produce more soap and shampoo every day. He needed more people, a lot more, to produce the cleaning products that everyone's been clamoring for. To solve this problem, Michael knew that he had to hire some more help. I've heard that once someone tried our product, they couldn't go back to their old soap. Isn't this great, young master? But when Michael heard that, he frowned. What about the other soap production businesses? What's happening with them? They're not doing great, she answered, confused as to why Michael wasn't happy with this outcome. Not good, Michael uttered. I'm sorry, but isn't this supposed to be great for the company? With less competition, we will have more customers in the future. Michael sighed. But we're ruining their business and their families. If they can't sell soap, they can't survive. I didn't start this business to earn money, I did this so that everyone's life can be more comfortable. Castell's heart felt warm as she heard Michael's words. Even though he had every right to be a greedy and ruthless businessman, he still cared about other people. Then what should we do, young master? That's easy. We buy them out. Instead of making the local soap business bankrupt, Michael wanted to absorb them into his company. It was a win-win scenario for everyone. Chapter 22 Generous offer. Because of how popular Reborn soap and shampoo became, times became rough for anyone in the soap production business. In a matter of days, their entire work became obsolete. No one was buying their products. Daddy, can you buy me a chessboard? Please, Daddy. A young man pleaded to his father, tugging on his shirt. The father was none other than the owner of the failing soap production business. I'm sorry, son. Money's a little tight right now. How about we buy you a chessboard next year? He said, kneeling to rub the boy's hair. No. I want it right now. His son ran away in tears, but he could do nothing but let the boy sulk. Now that no one was buying their soaps, they weren't earning enough money to even keep the business afloat. All the money he saved up was being used to pay his workers a decent salary in these hard times. Knock knock. Just then, someone knocked on the door to his office. He quickly welcomed the visitor in, hoping that it was a potential customer. Hello, what can I do for you? He said with a smile, feigning joy. Castell walked inside the man's office and bowed to him as a greeting. Good morning, sir. I'm here as a representative of the Reborn Company. The man sat up straight in his chair when he heard that. He would have never thought that his biggest competitor would suddenly come to his doorstep. What do you want? He said, a bit harshly. Castell sat on the chair opposite the desk and gave him a piece of paper. The man ignored it, not even giving it a glance, and kept looking at Castell. Seeing his obvious hostility, Castell knew that she had to pivot. Sir, why do you own a soap business? Castell asked. Isn't it obvious? I wanted to earn money. Wanted. But because of your company, I can't even give my son a chessboard for his birthday. My workers are struggling to eat. Castell then took the paper and showed it to the man, making sure that he finally paid attention to it. This is the formula for our soap. Our young master wants you to have it. The man's eyes widened. He quickly parsed through the contents of the paper and was surprised that it looked like a genuine step-by-step instruction on how to create Reborn soap. He couldn't believe it. Is this some sort of trick? What are you trying to pull? Castile shook her head. There is no trick. If you want to take that piece of paper with you, then we will gladly give it to you. There is no other condition. The man stood up and paced back and forth in his office. Why? Why are you giving your competitor the secret to your soaps? You could have kept it yourselves and drove us all out of business. Castile smiled and remembered the young master's words. The owner of the Reborn company doesn't want enemies, he wants everyone to live comfortably. And if what it takes is to give you the formula, then he is willing to do that. The man stopped in his tracks and looked at Castile to see if she was kidding. But she wasn't. She was serious. I don't know if I should laugh or commend him, the man said, rubbing his hair in frustration. They made it extremely hard for him to hate the Reborn company. Sir, if you wouldn't mind, can you tell me what you earn every month from selling soap? The man was confused with her question. What? On a good day, what would you have considered a good profit before the Reborn soap took over the market? Castile reiterated. The man thought it over and gave out a generous estimate. About 100 gold a month, he said. Castile then took out a pouch from her pockets and plopped it over to the man's desk. He wouldn't mistake that clinking sound for anything else. Those were gold coins, a lot of them too. The Reborn company is willing to give you a chance. If you come under the banner of our company, we are willing to give you 1,000 gold coins and a portion of sales every month if you produce Reborn products for us. The man gulped, his mind already lost in all the words Castile said. If you become part of us, you will officially sell Reborn soap and shampoo. The man sat back down in his chair. What happens if I refuse? Will you take back the formula? No. That formula is yours to keep. You can sell that soap under a different name, and we will not disturb your business. However, let me remind you that our Reborn company is not just a single product. The leader of our company has a lot of other products and ideas in store. He has plans to sell lotion, perfume, and other such products. It's not even limited to just cleaning products. As you may know, we are also the ones who brought chess into the market. If you join us, you can have the opportunity to be a part of that. If the man was short-sighted, he would have just taken the formula and produced Reborn soap by himself and kept all the profits. But in the long term, he would stand to gain much higher profits if he allied himself with the Reborn company. After all, the future of this company was astronomical. Still, this was a big decision. You can take your time deliberating for now. I'll be back a while later to hear your answer. Castile walked back to the door and gave him another courteous bow before she left. The man remained in his seat, with his head burrowed in his hands. His decision here could alter his and his family's fate for better or for worse. Just then, the door burst wide open as his son came running towards him with the biggest smile on his face. The little boy was carrying a chessboard personally made by Michael. Castile dropped it off as a present. Thank you, Daddy. I love you. Before he could even react, his son embraced him with a big hug. The man's smile slowly grew, with tears welling up in his eyes. Right then and there, his decision was set in stone. He was going to accept their offer. Chapter 23 Vanderbilt Inheritance. I have good news, young master. Each and every one of the soap businesses accepted our offer, Castile said, bowing towards the young master as he relaxed under the sun on the roof. That's good, he replied leisurely. From my estimates, our production of soap and shampoo increased by almost 2,000%. We can now create thousands of soaps and shampoos every day because of the infrastructure of the companies under our banner. They already started to sell it to the market and it's being sold out the minute it showed up in their wares. Peddlers have already started to sell it to other towns and it's starting to catch on as well. There was admiration and excitement in Castile's voice. She would have never thought that giving away the secret formula for the soap would end up becoming a huge boon for their company. She looked at the young master as if he had gold hands, and everything he touched became gold. Of course, Michael didn't think he was doing anything special. He was simply following the business practices of conglomerates back in his previous world. How much did we earn? Michael asked. Castile smiled and turned towards the door. They watched as a maid hauled a wooden chest up towards them. Judging from how much trouble she had pushing the thing, Michael knew that it was heavy. The maid then opened the wooden chest to reveal the thousands upon thousands of gold coins inside. Its luster reflected onto Michael's face, briefly turning his face yellow. Even when we paid for all the expenses, we still netted about 15,000 gold coins. Michael tried his hardest to keep calm, but when he converted the gold to US dollars, he had to take a deep breath. $150,000. That was what he earned in a single day. I guess I'm rich. Because of the increased production of Reborn soap and shampoo, the company's reputation skyrocketed to the moon. It's been noted that people were showering and washing their hands a lot more often because of Reborn soap and shampoo, which in turn lessened the spread of disease and sickness. In a matter of 2 months, Reborn Company captured the hearts of everyone, whether they were male, female, old, or young. Most women used their soap, and most men played their new board game. In Kingsbridge Town, the Reborn Company became a hot topic in newspapers and gossip. Everyone was wondering where they came from and who was responsible for creating such amazing products. There was a lot of speculation, ranging from the owner being a wizard from the future, a sage who lived in the mountains for 1,000 years, or even just a simple man whose genius knows no bounds. And despite almost ruining local soap businesses into bankruptcy, nobody seemed to hate the Reborn Company. Even the ruined soap companies started praising Reborn for their generosity. This increased the mystery surrounding the upstart company. They were the talk of the town. Everyone in Kingsbridge knew about the Reborn Company and was using their products religiously. And soon, it would spread to other neighboring towns and cities as well. It was only a matter of time until they completely carved a large portion of the market for themselves. But of course, none of this went over the heads of the largest company in Kingsbridge. Our survey concludes that the popularity of our company went down by at least 30% because of this Reborn business. Does anyone have any idea where these upstarts came from? Is this a ploy from our other rivals? No. They're feeling the same as us. A group of old, distinguished men in suits sat at a long table and looked over the reports in their hands. It was clear that this meeting wasn't planned, with most men looking quite haggard and sleep-deprived. Most of them hadn't even buttoned their vests correctly. It was already midnight, with the room only lit by torches and candles, but they still weren't done discussing plans about what to do with this new Reborn Company. What's the problem here, gentlemen? Why are we worried about a soap company? It wouldn't affect our important businesses in Kingsbridge, a young man said, clearly a bit more inexperienced than the rest. The one to answer his question was the bald old man opposite him. The problem is that they are starting to gain popularity within the people. Right now, they're just producing soap and shampoo. But what if they start to produce other products? Most people would immediately try out their products because of their popularity within the people. Look what happened with their new board game. It immediately got accepted by the majority as their new pastime. That spells trouble for us. We can't have them take away our customers or else our business will fail, the bald man said, his words getting angrier as he went on. What will we do? That was the question on everyone's mind. And there was only one person whose answer mattered in the room, and that was the owner of the largest company in Kingsbridge and the towns neighboring it. He was sitting at the very end of the table, showing his different status. The man stood up, with his back straight and his posture solid. He was the only one who had his suit completely clean, with no crease or speck of dirt, unlike the others. We can only do nothing, he said plainly. But Bart, this will affect the inheritance. Don't you want to fight for your father's entire wealth? The old man with the beard asked. I have no plans to fight in the succession of the Vanderbilt Company, Bart replied. Yes. That was right. The owner of the biggest company in Kingsbridge and the current rival of the Reborn Company was none other than Michael's father. After all, this business was what made the Vanderbilt name famous in the first place. It's what made them the richest family in the world. To be more exact, it was Bart's father, or Michael's grandfather, who built the Vanderbilt name and turned it into the global powerhouse it was now. And currently, there was a fight for the inheritance of the entire Vanderbilt Company. To figure out who best to succeed him, Michael's grandfather gave away sub-companies to his children and let them manage them in their own way. Bart received all the Vanderbilt businesses in Kingsbridge and the towns closest to it. Their other relatives received the companies abroad or in different countries. They all managed the Vanderbilt name to maintain its supremacy over every business in the world. But despite managing different companies and being in different places, there was one goal in common for the descendants of the Vanderbilt name. Whoever blossomed their company into a powerhouse was the one who would inherit the entire Vanderbilt wealth. Chapter 24 Return to the estate. Bart Vanderbilt walked out of the meeting room with his mind and body completely exhausted. He had to catch a carriage deep in the night to transport him to their guest house while out of town. Some of his maids and butlers greeted him as he walked inside the house, but he just gave them a curt greeting and immediately went into the master bedroom. He opened the door and saw that his wife, Lilia Vanderbilt, had just finished bathing herself in the washroom. There was an amazing floral scent coming off her body, and it was enough to erase the stress and fatigue in his mind. Honey, this Reborn soap and shampoo is amazing as they say. Lilia praised as she dried off her hair with a towel. Honey, you know they're our competitor, right? Bart said with a bitter smile. Even though the Reborn Company was starting to affect their business, he couldn't help but praise their amazing products. His wife was obsessed with their cleaning products, while he himself was also a fan of Reborn chess. You don't care about that, right? Lilia said, snuggling towards his arms. Bart smiled. Yes. As long as we have enough money to live comfortably, I am more than content with this life. I don't need to contend with my brothers and sisters for the entire Vanderbilt wealth. Lilia smiled and hugged him even tighter in their bed. This was the reason why she loved him in the first place. Can we go home soon? I miss my dear boy so badly. It had been almost 4 long months since she pinched his adorable cheeks and she was starting to have withdrawal symptoms. We'll be home soon. As soon as this business with the Reborn company is finished, we can go. The two went silent for a moment, letting the candles flicker in their room. Honey, I'm worried about what will happen to our dear Michael. Bart took a deep breath. Because he decided that he wasn't going to fight for the inheritance, it meant that Michael wouldn't have the same financial support as he did now. After all, once the inheritance was given to someone else, they would now control all the business of the Vanderbilt family, including the ones that Bart was currently managing. This meant that Michael wouldn't have much of an inheritance to take when he got older. This was one of the main reasons why Bart worked hard every second of every day. He wanted to build at least a sizable inheritance for Michael to receive, even if it meant that he would have to work away from home all the time and have no time to spend with him in his childhood. The money I saved up will be enough to get him through life without having to pay for anything. All his school or training expenses will be covered, Bart assured. But this did nothing to alleviate a mother's worry. Still, I want Michael to have the best life in this world. He's a Vanderbilt. He shouldn't have to worry about money at all. Is there anything we can do so that your father will save at least some of the inheritance for our Michael? Michael had a lot of relatives who were much older than him, meaning that if his grandfather did leave some inheritance, it would only go to his older relatives. But, if there was anything Bart knew about his father, it was that he valued skill above anything else. There is a way. If Michael shows some kind of talent in the sword, magic, or anything else, then my father would have a reason to leave him a sizable inheritance. However, impressing the man who built the Vanderbilt name from the ground up was a hard task to accomplish. If Michael wanted to impress his grandfather, then he would have to be a genius of unparalleled heights. He has my genes. He's bound to be talented in earth magic, Lilia said, with hope building up in her eyes. Yes, dear, Bart said as he caressed her hair to comfort her. Even though he said that, he knew that the chances of Michael becoming an unparalleled genius in earth magic were slim to none. Even having the potential to be a 6-star mage wasn't enough. He needed to have the potential of a 7-star wizard. But even geniuses fail to reach that stage. Their only hope was his awakening once he turned 10 years old. Only then would his talent manifest and hopefully be enough to impress his father. The days passed and things finally settled down enough for Bart and Lydia to return to their estate. They were out of their home for a total of 4.5 months, but for Lydia, it felt like years. Her hands impatiently tapped the window of their carriage as it waded through the forest. Then, as the trees started to thin, she finally caught a glimpse of their home from afar. Her smile widened as she imagined her dear Mike welcoming her home with a big hug. But as she gazed at their mansions from afar, her smile slowly curved back down. Even though the estate looked superficially the same as it did when she left, it felt like everything had changed. There was a certain atmosphere in the air that she couldn't explain. Her mother's senses were tingling. She was feeling jealous of something even though she hadn't even seen what was wrong yet. Is something the matter? Bart asked. Lydia then pointed out the window. Did you ask someone to create that strange-looking building? By the side of the mansion was a stone structure that was steaming from the inside out. Bart squinted his eyes and noticed the hot springs as well. No. I didn't order anyone to build that. I don't even know that is. They were so close to the mansion at this point that they could see the maids and the butlers lining up near the entrance to welcome them back from their long journey. Seeing their heads down, Bart and Lydia knew that something was suspicious going on. The carriage slowly stopped and they walked out its door. Welcome home, sir and madam. The maids and butlers announced all together. Lydia ignored them and immediately asked the most important question. Where's my little boy? Chapter 25 Michael's Genius. Oh Mom, Dad. You're here. Michael came out of the mansion with the most casual greeting ever. It was as if his mother and father weren't gazing at him with the sternest of looks. Can you explain what happened here? His father asked. Bart pointed at all the strange additions that happened to the mansion while they were gone for 4 months. Oh, well, that's a long story. Michael then proceeded to take both his mother and father on a tour of the entire mansion. First, he showed them the kitchen house, which was now fully equipped with plumbing and faucets that supplied clean water for use every day. Flush. Then, he demonstrated his new invention to them, the toilet, and showed how it solved the problem of waste in the mansion. Just one push of a button, and everything is flushed away down the pipes connected to the river. He gave them a very rudimentary explanation as to how the plumbing worked, and how every pipe that supplied water throughout the house all came from the tank on the roof. His father wordlessly examined the metal toilet and faucets, prodding them to see if it worked just as easily as Michael explained. From what he could see, magic was not the reason why it worked. It was all through the natural way things moved. Surprise and amazement flashed through his face. In his extensive knowledge of businesses in the world, he had never seen this kind of mechanical advancement before. Such an easy way to deliver fresh water through small metal pipes. It was such a simple idea, yet no one had ever discovered them before. Even the castles of kings and mansions of royals were not equipped with this kind of apparatus. They were still stuck with having mages create water or having their maids personally carry water to their chambers. It would have solved so many security issues. After all, having too many helpers could leave a royal vulnerable to assassins. It also solved the ever-present problem of cleanliness in the house. With this plumbing system. Immediately, Bart's business mind saw the potential of this plumbing system. If this was implemented in every home, it would revolutionize the entire world. Michael. Do you know who created this contraption? Will you introduce him to me? Bart asked. Michael awkwardly smiled and scratched his head. Of course I know him, father. He's me. Bart's face was frozen for a second. You created this? How? Michael knew that the time for secrets was over. He was finally going to show his magic to his parents. He took out a small piece of metal on the windowsill and cast a spell to bend its shape using nothing but the earth mana inside his body. His whole body glowed into an ivy green aura as the excess mana he used was manifested as light. The thin, straight piece of metal was now turned into a miniature framework of a house. Lalia gasped. 2-star spell. Metal bend. As a self-proclaimed genius of earth magic, of course she was going to recognize the spell Michael cast. Even Bart was surprised. 2-star spell. As a 5-year-old. Before Bart could even process this mind-blowing information, Lalia grabbed his shoulders and shook him vigorously, almost as if she was trying to shimmy the soul out of his body. Do you hear that, honey? ? Our son is an earth magic prodigy. Michael and the rest of the maids and butlers plucked their ears from the madam's scream. Oh, my sweet, dear boy. You've inherited my genes. That's great. I always knew you'd be the most talented magician in the entire universe. Michael struggled to breathe as his mother took him into a big embrace. If she was this clingy when she found out about his earth magic aptitude, how would she become if she found out he could use all 4 elemental magic? He inwardly prepared himself. Bart kneeled and looked at Michael in the eyes. Even though Bart tried his hardest to remain calm, there was pride and joy in his eyes whenever he looked at Michael. Tell me, son. How did you learn magic? Lalia immediately hugged Michael from behind and pouted at Bart. Of course, it's because I always took him with me whenever I gathered mana. She was right. Michael wouldn't have been introduced to magic so early if she hadn't shown him how to gather mana while he was a baby. He had her to thank for that, but he wasn't going to say that out loud. I remember seeing mages casting spells, Michael said, trying to act like a 5-year-old telling a cute story. I thought they were cool, so I copied what they were doing. Both of them were speechless. The last time they invited an earth mage into their mansion was when they constructed Michael's first birthday party. If what Michael said was true, then he was able to remember, memorize, and decode earth magic spells when he was only a 1-year-old boy. He said it with such innocence that most people would have thought that he was just saying something cute, but the essence of his words was nothing but monstrous. And the faucets? The toilet? How did you know how to create them? Michael shrugged his shoulders. I have a voice inside my head that's telling me what to do, he said ever so innocently. Bart and Lalia looked at each other, trying to seek validation to their surprise. To them, it looked like Michael was unaware of his own genius. They thought that the voice inside Michael's head was his own subconscious mind. And just like how a genius pianist could create an amazing melody through their intuition alone, Michael could create inventions just through imagination. It seemed that they gave birth to an intuitive genius unlike no other. Haha, Bart chuckled. And here I was worried that our son wouldn't be talented enough. Michael was intellectually smart and gifted in earth magic. He was more than talented. Our son is a genius. Lydia squished her face with Michael's. Ding dong. Just then, they heard a ringing bell echoing in the halls. What's that? Asked Bart. Oh, that's the clock, sir. It means that it's time for lunch. Sebastian said. Clock? Chapter 26. Wanting a clock. Bart just about passed out when Michael introduced him to the mansion clock. Just the complexity of the gear and pendulum system inside almost made his head spin. It was even more complicated than some magic theories. At first, Bart didn't understand what was so special about the machine. After all, it wasn't as obviously useful as the faucet or the toilet. But when Michael explained to him how the entire day was split into 24 hours, and how the clock ticked for a constant amount of time, the realization finally hit him in the face. This is magnificent. Bart praised. As a businessman, he knew how important timekeeping was in the industry. For example, everyone in the business industry always had a problem with the shipment of goods between two different places. A shipment was sent early during the day and would reach its destination before sundown. However, both parties don't have a precise way to estimate when that shipment would return. After all, they had no frame of reference to how much time would pass before the carriage reached its destination. Sure, there were sundials and hourglasses, but they were too inconsistent. But with this clock, everyone could agree on when the shipment would arrive. They would know that the shipment from Kingsbridge to the next town over would need 4 ticks in the clock or 4 hours. This would revolutionize commerce. And that was just the application he could think of as a businessman. There were plenty more general uses for the public. Ahem. Another great work, son. Your work is truly one of a kind, Bart said calmly, trying not to sound too excited. Bart had to rein in his enthusiasm for the clock. After all, it wasn't his. No matter how much he wanted his own clock for his business, it wouldn't be right to ask a favor from his 5-year-old son. Michael smiled. Dad, do you want to have a clock? Bart's body jumped up, his body shaking in excitement. But still, he didn't let his emotions get the best of him. You created this, so it is rightfully yours. It wouldn't be appropriate of me to take it for myself. The shining light in his eyes betrayed his words. He was practically salivating at the thought of having his own clock. It's fine, Dad. Michael waved off his father's concern. I can make one for you. The only problem is that I don't have enough raw materials for now. Bart looked at Michael. Are you sure? He said, with anticipation leaking out in his tone. Lilia snuggled up to her husband's arms and teased him. Foo-fa-foo. Stop pretending, dear. I know you want one for yourself. Then, she turned to Michael. Don't worry about the materials, honey. I want you to create that clock and show us how you constructed this magnificent work of art. Lilia's motivations for this were completely different from Bart's. She wanted to see her son perform earth magic to satisfy her desire of seeing firsthand how much of a genius her 5-year-old son was at earth magic. Since it would take a couple of days to create the clock, Michael continued the tour and showed off his latest creation to his parents, the hot springs. They walked out of the mansion and went over to the steaming stone building next to it. The maids and butlers immediately assisted them in entering the hot springs, by fanning the flames to keep the temperature hot and showing them the proper attire inside. The maids helped Lydia while the butlers assisted Bart. This is reminiscent of the hot baths overseas, Bart said, letting the steam of the hot springs hit his face. He had visited another country once, and their hot springs were one of the reasons why millions upon millions of foreigners visited their country every single year. He would have never thought that Michael could create something similar to their hot springs when there wasn't a volcano anywhere near this place. This is relaxing, Bart said as he immersed himself in the bath. It wasn't just the hot springs that relieved him of the stress and fatigue on his body, it was also the fact that his son was a transcendent genius who would have no trouble flourishing in the world. He no longer had any doubt whether Michael's grandfather would leave him any inheritance. The old man would recognize the ingenuity in Michael's inventions and immediately fund him to create more stuff in the future. Bart relaxed knowing that his son was a genius. Michael was able to create innovative solutions to problems that intellectuals couldn't figure out for thousands of years. If there was a solution, then it would largely involve magic and spells. But Michael was able to create running water with simple physics. This meant that everyone could use this invention, whether they were poor or rich. You'll do well in the future, son. Michael relaxed next to his father in the hot springs. For some reason, Michael felt as if Bart was trying to tell him something, but decided that he was far too young to know about it. Michael. Just then, Lilia's voice boomed through the thick stone walls of the divider between the two hot springs. Both father and son flinched, knowing what would come next. Lilia came running to the men's section of the hot springs with a towel draped over her body. What's wrong, Mom? Michael asked, trying to look as innocent as possible. What's this I hear about you bathing with the maids? She asked with a smile, yet her eyes were painted with bloodshed. This is unacceptable. How come you bathe with them and not with me? You come over to our side of the hot springs this instant. Just when he thought he was able to excuse himself from bathing in the women's section. He told the maids to not tell his mother about that, but it seemed that his mother was a better interrogator than she was a mage. And don't think you can get away with letting me pinch your cheeks, Lilia said, with her hands on her waist. She was serious. To get out of this situation, he knew that there was only one thing he could do. He raised his hand and conjured a ball of water, a small rock, and a flickering flame, and rotated them around his hands using wind. Look, Mom. I can cast all 4 elements. Chapter 27 Quadruple Cores. Michael seemed to have underestimated how much fanfare he would get after announcing his world-breaking talent of a quadruple element mastery. His mom and dad immediately got out of the hot springs and questioned him intensely about his magic talents. Even though the manifestations of the 4 basic element spells were as clear as day, Lilia and Bart simply couldn't believe their eyes. After all, not even the current 9-star Grand Wizard of the world had this kind of talent when he was a 5-year-old child. It was unthinkable to dream up the fact that a child, who wasn't taught anything about magic during his childhood, actually had the talent to command all the main elements of the universe. They had him cast simple spells, such as the Water Ball, Ember, Rock Throw, and Wind Blow, a couple of times in front of their eyes to get them fully convinced. Even then, they still felt like they were dreaming. To confirm this, they invited a 5-star wizard from the Magic Tower in Kingsbridge to come and assess Michael's talents in the 4 elements. 4 hours later, the wizard came into the mansion and started the assessment. Bart paced back and forth while Lilia bit her nails as they watched the wizard raise his wand and cast an inspection spell toward Michael. "I'm here to assess your mana core," the wizard said to Michael like he was a child who needed pampering. Unlike the Vanderbilts who wanted immediate confirmation, the wizard wasn't in a rush. This wasn't the first time a hopeful parent hired him to see if their child was a transcendent talent in the mystic arts. Most, if not all the time, the child only ended up having a mediocre talent destined to be stuck below the 5th-star realm. The wizard thought Michael would be the same. As light mana left his core and gathered at the tip of his wand like a lightning rod, a mystical screen made out of a milky white liquid substance appeared between him and Michael. Whatever semblance of mana core Michael had in his body would show up as a bright light on the white screen, confirming what talent he had in the mystic arts, if any. The wizard gasped, taking a step back to keep himself upright. "Invasive magic spell detected. Since you are voluntarily agreeing to the inspection, the magic spell is allowed to pass through your body. Analyzing magic theory acquired, mana core inspection, light and dark element. This magic creates a screen for the user to peer through a target's body and observe the mana core forming inside. The mana cores will show up as different lights corresponding to the elements." Michael was glad to find out that the stones in his body had an actual name. Mana core. So that's what it's called. More importantly, the best thing he discovered through all of this was that there were other elements besides the 4 basic ones. Case in point, the new 4-star spell he learned needed light and dark mana, which he currently didn't have any stored in his body. It seemed that gathering those special mana necessitated some kind of special event, or else Michael would have chanced upon them naturally in the world around him. He wanted to ask the wizard how he could gather light mana, but the man was too stunned to even speak. "Wizard, what did you see?" Bart said, his voice nervous. The wizard took a big gulp of air trying to clear the surprise out of his body. But every time he looked at the 4 bright shining lights in the white screen overlaid on Michael's body, he felt like he was going to faint. A vibrant green light, a fiery red light, a warm brown light, and a cool silvery light shone brightly on Michael's lower abdomen. The presence of these 4 lights coexisting under a 5-year-old's body wasn't as problematic as the brightness they emitted. The 4 mana cores were as big as an orange. One would only see this large size and concentration of mana with the cores of adolescent to adult mages, who had years upon years of formal training and cultivation. No one would expect, or even believe, that the wizard saw it on a 5-year-old boy with no training whatsoever. He would have already been considered a 1-in-1,000-year genius just with this mana pool alone. But to have this much mana on all 4 elements? That was suffice it to say otherworldly. He is adept in the 4 elements, the wizard said, fixing his tall, pointed hat and wiping the sweat off his forehead. "I have never seen this kind of talent in the mystic arts before. I'm afraid I am not sufficient in properly assessing his talent in magic. I deeply urge you to take him to the Magic Tower at your earliest convenience. He must not waste his youth and start training this instant. We are willing to take him under our wings." Formally. Bart was happy to hear that Michael was indeed a genius in the mystic arts. This could pave the way for Michael to become one of the most esteemed wizards in the world that even royals and kings would have to pay respects to. But after hearing their offer of taking him informally, Bart was a little bit worried. After all, by joining the Guild of Arcana, Michael would have to spend his whole life studying in the Magic Tower, foregoing all earthly desires to pursue the pinnacle of mystery. Not only that, if Michael got too involved with the mages, his loyalty could shift over from the Vanderbilt family to the Guild of Arcana. While Bart was worrying about the consequences of Michael being too much of a genius, his wife, on the other hand, was worrying about more important things. "So?" Lilia asked the wizard. "What is it, madam?" the helpless wizard asked. "Is his earth element core bigger than the other cores? Tell me he's more talented in earth magic." The wizard didn't know what to say. Chapter 28 Learning Stone Armor. Things have changed a lot in the Vanderbilt estate ever since Michael revealed his true magical aptitude to his parents. His daily life consisted of an early morning tutoring session with his mother in earth magic, cramming all kinds of information into him in an effort to make his earth mana the best out of the 4 elements. She treated it as if it was a competition. You're soaking up all the information. As expected of my little genius. Despite being forced to wake up early in the morning, Michael didn't mind the tutoring sessions. He learned a lot of new information about earth magic and spells that he wouldn't have known otherwise. Earth mana is strongest early in the day since that is when the flowers, plants, stones, and animals wake up to soak all the energy in their surroundings and convert it into earth mana, Lilia continued to explain. It was interesting to learn that earth mana came from the beings living in the world. The best way to explain it would be to compare it to the natural cycle of life. Plants soak up light from the sun and convert it into energy. Then, animals eat those plants and use them as their source of energy. Some of that energy gets used up while some of it gets thrown away into waste. And also earth mana. She also taught him how to properly meditate. The purer mana one could gather to fill their core, the higher magic output they could achieve. Mana gathering or meditating was a practice that all mages needed to master first and foremost. And since Lilia was a genius at earth magic, she was excellent at meditating earth mana. The best way to teach a kid the proper technique was to embrace them and gather mana for them, sort of like a proxy. She was so excited to teach him about mana gathering, but was quickly saddened once she realized that he was already quite adept at meditating. Earth mana as well as the other 3 elemental mana revolved around Michael's tiny body like a tornado. It didn't take long before everything got sucked up into his cores, increasing its size by a tiny bit. It was all thanks to Chachkwon, of course. His personal eye assistant was in charge of gathering mana for him, even while he was asleep. With nothing left to teach him, his mother then demonstrated a few spells for him. This is a 2-star spell called Stone Armor, Lilia said as she spread her hands, with a brownish aura glowing around her body. Michael watched as pieces of granite stones manifested in the air above his mother's skin and stuck to her like a magnet. It formed a skin-tight armor on her body, protecting the torso, head, arms, and legs. The granite armor made her seem like a Norse goddess ready for battle. Analyzing magic theory acquired, stone armor, earth element. This magic allows the user to create a protective armor made out of stone. This armor coats the whole body in an invisible protective layer. The armor's aesthetic quality depends on the user's imagination. The armor's defensive quality depends on the user's mana quality and quantity. Each hit will decrease the user's mana depending on the strength of the attack. Before Lilia could even show off her armor to Michael, she saw his body emanate earth mana the same way hers did when she cast stone armor. Chunks of granite stone floated a few inches above his body before sinking to his skin, forming a full-body armor reminiscent of the fantasy heroes he saw in anime. Cool. Thanks, Mom. Michael said casually, feeling grateful to learn a useful spell. Although she was proud of her son, she couldn't help but feel as if everything about Michael was absurd. It didn't even take him a few seconds before he was able to replicate her mastery of the spell she spent years practicing. It was a good thing he was her son, or else she would have considered his talent too unfair. Because this spell is made out of earth mana, it is a good defense against wind attacks. However, it is weak against fire attacks, Lilia explained. It turned out that just like in a certain game back in his previous life, all elements had strengths and weaknesses against other elements. For earth, it was good against air but bad against fire. I understand stone armor, Mom, but I want something that will protect me against all attacks. I don't want any weaknesses in my defense. Lilia shook her head. All spells have their weaknesses and strengths. That was not ideal for Michael. For his life to be comfortable, he wanted to be overly powerful in defense. So much so that no enemy could kill him even if he let them attack him without trying to evade their moves. If there's stone armor, then is there also a water armor? That would surely protect me from fire unlike stone armor. He asked his mother this question, and the answer was yes. It has a different name, but the concept is the same. It just has different elements, she said, reminiscing about her adventurous life before she settled down. If that's true, then maybe I can stack all kinds of elemental armor all over my body and protect me from all harm. Michael thought. Chachkwon, can you create a spell that is similar to stone armor, but in different elements? Apologies. There is insufficient information for me to create spells at the moment. The solution to this problem was to simply see more spells. Thankfully, he was going to visit the magic tower soon. Hopefully, he could get a handful of spells from that place. Can't wait to learn water armor, Michael uttered to himself. Unfortunately, it seemed that his mother had the ears of a sensitive owl. Michael swore he saw her head turn 180 degrees while she stared daggers at him. You'll what now? I didn't hear you wanting to learn water spells while I'm here, right? Surely not. Michael awkwardly laughed and slowly backed away. He should have learned by now how possessive his mother was, even when it came to magic. He tried to excuse himself by saying he was going to do something else, but his mother quickly caught him by the cuffs. Chapter 29 Kingsbridge. After the early morning tutor sessions with his mother, Michael spent the afternoons constructing the clock he was going to give his father. Since this wasn't his first time making the machine, he was able to build the clock a little bit smaller, making it look like the old grandfather clocks he had seen back in his previous life. It was still big, but not as large as a cabinet. His father, upon hearing the rhythmic ticking of the clock, couldn't help but scream out in excitement. "Hoo-oo! Woo!" the man said, letting go of all pretenses he had about being dignified. Seeing the pendulum swing back and forth seemed to have hypnotized the man. He couldn't help but swing his head back and forth as well. Michael watched his father become obsessed with the clock, to the point that he looked a little bit silly. "Do you like it that much, Dad?" Michael said, chuckling to himself. He had never seen his father act like this. He always saw his dad as a serious character, treating everything with a no-nonsense attitude. But now, he was seeing him in a completely different light. "I still can't understand how it works and how you created it, but this is amazing, son." "Thank you. I can't wait to install it in my office," Bart said as he ruffled Michael's hair. "Now that you have that, you have no excuse for coming home late, right dear?" Lilia sounded like she was joking, but both father and son knew that it was a real threat. "Oh, would you look at the time? We better get going now so we'll arrive at Kingsbridge before lunch, ha ha ha." It seemed Michael inherited his ability to fend off Lilia's scary questions from his father. Today was the day they were going to Kingsbridge to visit the Magic Tower. The only reason why it took them about a week to go to Kingsbridge was because Michael's mother wanted to improve his earth magic a little bit more before he got assessed. It didn't matter though, because Michael finally got the chance to see mages up close and personal. "Hey Chatchkwan, you're ready to analyze more magic spells, right? I am fully capable of scanning magic spells that are performed in your vicinity." That was what he liked to hear. A few hours later, Sebastian stopped the horses dragging the carriage and peeked through the window. "Sir, madam, young master, we have arrived at Kingsbridge." Michael had heard a lot about Kingsbridge after hearing Castell's daily report about the Reborn company. According to her, Kingsbridge was a large city whose citizens were a little bit wealthier than the average citizen. The normal inhabitants of this place consisted of rich merchants, famous swordsman families, and even royals. This was the reason why they could sell Reborn soap and shampoo at 1 gold coin a pair. Most people wouldn't be able to afford that, but the people at Kingsbridge were more than wealthy enough to splurge on keeping themselves happy. Michael looked out the window and saw the tall stone wall surrounding the city, with archers and soldiers stationed at each watchtower. The walls are made out of stone and mortar to provide strength and stability to the structure. They have an estimated height of 20 meters or equivalent to a 6-story building. "Would you like to know more?" "No. I'm good, thanks." As expected of a wealthy city, they didn't skimp out on arming their soldiers to the teeth. The enforcers guarding the gate were clad in full steel armor, with gold plating wrapped around to emanate a royal aura to the soldiers. "I pay respects to the Vanderbilts," said the soldier as he bowed to the carriage. They weren't questioned or had their carriages inspected like all the other people entering the city. They were let in purely because of the Vanderbilt emblem on their carriage. By the way, their emblem was the symbol of 2 hands cupping an overflowing collection of gold coins, with the image of the planet below it. Michael thought it was too much, considering they put real gold on their emblem just to show off their wealth. After they were let in, Sebastian continued to lead their carriage towards the large black spire in the distance. Meanwhile, Michael put his head out the window. This was the first time he would be witnessing a real medieval city with his own 2 eyes. He had an abstract idea of what they looked like since he frequently watched anime and TV shows depicting this era, but seeing it in real life felt more surreal. The men were wearing fine tunics, while the women were wearing puffy gowns as if it were normal. It looked like they were cosplaying, but they weren't. This was their true attire for the day. As the carriage continued to rock through the cobblestone roads of Kingsbridge, Michael's leisurely observation of the city was interrupted by a horrible scent that filled his senses. Ugh! He had to pinch his nose. He couldn't take it anymore. "Wabbid Dad. What is that?" However, his parents didn't seem to notice anything wrong. "What's wrong, dear?" Michael looked at them as if they were crazy. "Don't you smell that?" Lilia and Bart both looked at each other. They didn't know what was smelling so bad. Then, Bart finally remembered that this was the first time Michael visited Kingsbridge. "Oh, you must be smelling the river dames," Bart explained. Soon enough, the carriage reached a wide bridge leading to the next part of town. Michael looked out the window and finally realized what was smelling so bad. The river dames was full of pollution. Not just any pollution, it was human pollution, meaning human waste. This world was still stuck in the medieval times when human waste was simply thrown into the river with no regard for cleanliness. Michael had been living with modern toiletry in the mansion for so long that he forgot this fact. Only now did this face hit him in his face. Chapter 30 Magic Tower. With such an expansive city full of wealthy citizens, Michael would have thought that they would spend a lot of money keeping their place clean. They not cladding? Why are they not cleaning? They do. Every week, magicians come and purify the river dames. From what I know, they just cleaned it yesterday, Bart said. Yesterday? ? They just cleaned the river yesterday, but it was already full of waste. Michael couldn't believe it. He couldn't spend a day living in a place that smelled like feces. But the citizens of this city didn't even look dazed as they walked along the bridge. They were too used to the horrible smell. You know what this place needs? A sewage system. Having mages purify the waste every week is ignoring the root of the problem. This is gonna spread disease all over the city. Would you like me to explain how a sewage system can work using materials available in this world? One suggestion made him think. Should he build a sewage system in Kingsbridge City? Michael set his thoughts aside, at least for now. He doubted that the bigwigs in Kingsbridge would allow him to construct such a large-scale renovation in their city. Soon enough, they reached the towering spire. It was as tall as some skyscrapers back in his previous world, with the same texture and color as the obsidian he saw from a certain blocky survival game he played back in his other life. Interestingly enough, the entrance to the magic tower was a door-like portal that was made out of a swirling green liquid. We have reached the magic tower. The tower master has been alerted of our arrival and will send someone to welcome the young master, Sebastian said as he opened the carriage door. Michael immediately got out and stretched his body. He couldn't wait to get more useful spells. After a few seconds, the green portal shimmered as a figure came out from the other side. It was a woman in her mid-20s wearing a green robe and a black pointed hat, which was the typical attire of mages in this world. Welcome, esteemed guests, she said. We're here to see the tower master. Is he here? Lilia asked straightforwardly. The woman didn't seem to mind her rudeness and actually seemed as if there was a glimmer of admiration in her eyes whenever she looked at Michael's mother. It is an honor to meet the Earthen Witch, she said, referring to Lilia. Unfortunately, the tower master has tended to some other business for the moment and cannot meet you this instant. But he will be back in about an hour. TSK. What's that old man doing? Lilia sounded annoyed. From what Michael heard, it seemed as if his mother was acquainted with the tower master. Mom, do you know these people? This time, it was the woman who answered. Of course, little one. Your mother is one of the most talented mages to come out of this magic tower. She used to be called the Earthen Witch of the West. If she hadn't given up her hat, she would have probably become the next tower master. Lilia waved off the woman's praises, treating it as nothing but a thing of the past. I told you, honey. I was a pretty talented earth mage back in the day. You don't need to learn from the magic tower. I can teach you everything you need to know about earth spells, Lilia said. Dear, you're being rude, Bart warned his wife. Then, he turned to the woman and asked her if they should come back at a later date. There's no need, she answered. The little one here can take a little tour of our magic tower to get him acquainted with our business. Michael perked up when he heard that. Would he finally be able to see mages hurling amazing spell after spell? Can I? He asked, showing his enthusiasm. Well, alright. We'll leave him in your care for now, Lilia said, a bit begrudgingly. Don't worry, Miss Lilia. We will take care of the little one, the woman said, taking Michael's hand and leading him to the entrance of the magic tower. Michael bid goodbye to his parents as if he was a kindergarten student getting left off at daycare. They were quite busy with some Vanderbilt business, so they couldn't stay with Michael for the whole day. So, little Vanderbilt. Why did you want to visit the magic tower? Have you taken an interest in learning magic? Your age is the perfect time to start gathering mana to form a core. Michael looked up at her. They didn't tell you why I'm here? The woman shook her head. No. We're only told that you were to meet the tower master. Michael knew that it wasn't going to be a secret, so he blurted out the truth. Well, I'm here to get my magic talent assessed. Oh. That's wonderful. You must have manifested some kind of talent in earth magic, given your mother's talent in it. Michael nodded. Yeah, I guess I'm talented in earth magic. At least, that's what they say. I haven't met anyone else to compare myself with. The woman smiled. She thought nothing of his words and thought that it was just simple ramblings of a 5-year-old child. And as they walked closer to the magic tower, Michael felt the abundance of mana in the air. It was dense. It was as if he was walking in a sea of mana particles, with lights of all colors swarming his vision. Whoa, Michael uttered. There's a lot of mana here. But why is it imbalanced? There's more fire element than the rest, and there's not a lot of water element. The woman nodded. Yes, that's because, wait. How can you sense the other mana in the air? I thought you were talented in earth magic? Michael shrugged his shoulders. I'm talented in all of them. The woman stopped dead in her tracks and looked at Michael with wide eyes. Meanwhile, Michael went ahead and walked closer to the portal inside the magic tower. And as he did, he sensed something unfamiliar. Detecting the presence of new mana, analyzing, complete. You have now gained the ability to gather 4 new types of mana: light, dark, lightning, and poison.